Apparently we're ready.
This is rolling.
This meeting will come to order. Good evening. This is the October 25th, 2011 meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We're going to begin with our executive session this evening, followed by a public hearing at 8:15 tonight. I just wanted to begin the meeting with a couple of housekeeping items. The first is, as you know, we are saddened by the passing of the chairman of our Zoning Board of Appeals, Bob Brennan, who was a colleague of some of us, a friend of many of us. And I'd just like to begin the meeting with a moment of silence for Mr. Brennan, who passed since the date of our last meeting. Thank you. And I just asked the clerk to insert a blank page in the minutes of this meeting in memory of Attorney Brennan, who's passed. Next item I'd like to note is this, a number of us, several of us are up for election. This may be the last meeting before the election, so I'd like to wish good luck to all of my colleagues who are running again. Hope to see us all together in a few weeks. There is...
No, it's in the back room. Don't worry about that. Okay.
There is one member who is not coming back, and that's Commissioner Owens, who is not running for re-election. So on behalf of the Commissioner, I just wanted to thank you, Deb, for your service on this commission. It's as the public may not know, but we know, you have to be very dedicated. There's a number of meetings, several meetings at least every month that Commissioner Owens and the rest of us must attend, plus many more meetings while we were doing Commerce Drive. Plus the trips around town, walking sites, looking at sites at all hours of the day and night. So on behalf of the commission and the town, thank you, Deb, for your service to this commission. We'll miss you.
Thank you very much.
And now we'll begin with the agenda. I would just note, in case anyone is here for one particular item, that is number 2B, new applications to recommend to public hearing. I'm advised that the application of 3160 Easton Turnpike, special exception application of St. Vincent's Medical Center for a hospital building in an R3 zone, has been withdrawn, so there is no need to recommend that to public hearing. So we can take item 2B off of our agenda this evening. First item on the agenda are the meeting minutes for October 11th, 2011. Is there a motion on those minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Barrett has moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Owens has seconded. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes as proposed? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes of October 11, 2011 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Thank you. Commissioner Wagner has abstained. Minutes are approved. All in favor, one abstention. Next item, 1648, 1649 Fairfield Beach Road, request of Attorney Fitzpatrick for a one-year extension of a special exception application in a beach district.
This was a special exception granted on October 28th of 2008. This commission has granted one-year extension of this. I'm not sure, I haven't calculated under our change in the regulation. I'm not sure that we need to extend this, but since the request is before us for a one-year extension, I don't see any harm in doing so, but I believe there's still a couple years left under the recent amendment that we made to extend the lifespan of special permit applications.
Yeah, I thought we said retroactively, anything that had already gone over 5 years expired, and anything that was under 5 years kind of got extended to 5 years. I thought we said that.
I thought we
changed the
decided.
regulations.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we need to vote on this because of
Okay.
that. So we should be, and we can note on the record that because of the change, that's how we've interpreted this retroactive effect of this, and indicated that this would be deemed to be so extended. Next item on the agenda is 1073 North Benson Road, request of Fairfield University for a 100% release of a $57,950 bond pertaining to a special exception improvements, and this is specifically the Village Dorm building.
Yeah, this item and the following item are two separate student residential projects that were recently completed by the university. You have a report from Laura Pooley in the engineering department recommending 100% release. This first one was the Village is more of an apartment-style dorm down behind the library, just to kind of orient you on campus. We, as well as the engineering department, are satisfied that the bonded improvements have been completed.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item for 1073 North Benson Road, the Village Dorm building?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Connolly has moved to approve. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Commissioner Alessi has seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Wait.
No, I'll vote aye.
Okay.
Thank
Approved
you.
unanimously.
Mr. Alessi can't make,
Oh, I'm
there's
sorry.
7
Mr. Alessi,
members
yes.
present,
Oh,
Mr. Alessi can't make motions.
Let's back up then. Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Sorry, just don't want to have it in the record.
Commissioner Connolly has moved. Who else was seconding? Is it okay?
Doug had a
Commissioner
sign.
Wagner seconded.
Yeah.
Yes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Next item, 1073 North Benson Road, request of Fairfield University for a 100% release of a $44,685 bond pertaining to special exception improvements. This specifically is the quad dorm. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Connelly has moved to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Wagner has seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacobs.
When this was before us in the public hearing, there was a request that any negotiations with the town on the sidewalks on Round Hill be notified to the commission, to the commissioners. I just want to reiterate that. It has not occurred as of yet, and the construction on the sidewalks has occurred in the beginning stages. I want to thank the university for taking our suggestions and working on the sidewalk, but I also want to, state again that any correspondence on it, any negotiation on it should be going in copy to the commissioners so that we know what's going on. And with that, I will be supporting this bond release.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Any other discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor of this request signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Passes unanimously. Next item, new application for recommendation to public hearing, 278 Meadow Street, a special permit application of 278 Meadow Street LLC for an office addition. This is a design commercial district.
278 Meadow Street is, you can see it from I-95. It's adjacent to Gainham Garden Center, just to ballpark you where that is. There's a business there, Fairfield Stone. Fairfield Pool is, they have an office presently or showroom on Black Rock Turnpike. They're leaving that site and looking to put an addition onto the building at 278 Meadow Street for, to accommodate the Fairfield Pool office.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item to refer to public hearing?
Move to public hearing.
Commissioner Jacobs has moved. Is there a second? Commissioner Wagner has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of 278 Meadow Street moving to public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Next item for old business, 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield College Preparatory School for additions and alterations. This is a AA zone, public hearing October 11th, 2011. Expiration date for our decision, December 15th, 2011. Present is Leclerc, Barretts, Jacobs, Connelly, Owens, Suter, Alessi, Parker, and Valera. So just
To be Jerry for Matt.
yeah, Commissioner Wagner, did you listen to the tapes on this?
No.
You did not. So Commissioner Alessi, you will be on this item for Commissioner Wagner.
Okay.
Commissioners Parker and Valera are off. Is there a
Quick
motion on
overview?
the, we'll move first and then we'll have
Sure.
discussion. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Connelly's moved to approve, second by Commissioner Jacobs.
Okay, again, as the chairman has mentioned, subject to securing a special exception, this is a proposed addition to the Fairfield Prep School. This new portion of the building will include an expanded new dining area, small offices, restrooms, and a mechanical storage room. A second addition area will be located in the southwest corner of the same side of the building and include a fitness area for students and an internal staircase to provide a connection to the existing buildings. Overall, the addition will accommodate the fitness center, dining room enlargement for the school's current student population. The total area of the addition would be approximately 13,688 square feet. As part of the improvement plan, it was reported at the hearing 2 visitor parking spaces would be eliminated. However, It was noted that 279 spaces remain for the Fairfield Prep students, staff, and visitors. It was reported that regarding the school's needs, I confirmed that the existing enrollment would be maintained the same, and there would be no increase in staff levels either. As also as part of your packet, the application, a certificate of wetland conformance had been issued for this proposal, and also you'll have a report from the town engineering department, which reviewed the drainage report and finds that the systems are designed to meet the requirements of the water quality improvements and stormwater attenuation. That's essentially what was outlined.
Thank you. Is there any, Commissioner Canali?
I thought that the presentation we heard provided us with a view of what appears to be an architecturally very attractive project. It seems to fold in nicely with the current campus building structure. Actually, the sort of atrium, the glassed-in area, reminded me a little bit of the Donnelly Science Center at my school. Like, oh, it's really an attractive mix of modern and Gothic. I really liked it very much. From an efficiency standpoint, we heard, there's not going to be additional runoff as a result of what appears to be a sensible and actually kind of clever design. I'm certainly, open to any concerns or considerations that fellow commissioners have, but, urge everybody to support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Canali. Commissioner Jacobs?
This is one that I can wholeheartedly support. It meets our requirements, but then there are other things that I look at also. It meets our requirements in many ways, and it has the wetlands compliance. But they went beyond when they tried to not file for the gold standard, but to make the gold standard. They are doing a really good job on the environmental side and making this a sustainable building, very efficient. It also will have none effect of anyone outside the campus. You can't see it from outside the campus. No one will know. And by them saying that they're not going to increase staff or students, there will be no other effect. So I see this as a win for everyone, increased efficiency in the building, and a better facility for their students.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Commissioner Sutter?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good application. I thought I was impressed by the fact that they tried to make the building conform to existing architecture on campus, and they kept it at a low elevation, and that they were maximizing the state-of-the-art climate and occupancy controls. It's a very, I thought, well-thought-out application, and it will be a positive addition to Fairfield U.
Thank you. Is there any other comment or discussion by any member of the commission? I would just echo what my colleagues have said. While you cannot see this from any public thoroughfare, that's unfortunate because it's a beautiful addition, and it will appear as though it was always there. They've really thought the Gothic look of the building and have made it look better, if anything, by making this change to the building. So I commend the university on doing that, by making this beautiful addition to their building. Hearing no further comment, all in favor of application of 1073 North Benson Road, Fairfield College Preparatory School for a special exception for alterations and additions, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Next item, we have our compliance applications. We have 4. The first is 95 Reef Road, application of Bruce Becker for expansion of an existing parking in a center design district.
Okay. Again, very quickly, this site is on the easterly side of Reef Road, adjacent to Sherman Green. A proposal to house a medical tenant here on the first floor requires 2 additional parking spaces. The application is for the expansion of the parking to accommodate those spaces in order to minimize the disturbance of the existing landscaping. The applicant is seeking approval of a tandem space at the rear of the building to be designated as an employee space. Tandem space is not unprecedented, but it does require approval by this commission to vary the standards in order to accomplish the objectives of the parking regulations pursuant to 2811.2. Tabled this at the last meeting. You want to go out and take a look at the landscaping, and subsequent to that, you've also received a supplemental packet from the applicant with site plan that fits on the entirety of the page, and there's some photos of the existing landscaping that they're trying to maintain and where this space would be located. There is very minimal disturbance to create that space. The concern at the previous meeting was whether or not a tree had to be removed to accommodate that space, and they confirmed that it would not have to be removed. So,
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve this meeting.
Commissioner Canali has moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Owens has seconded. Any discussion?
I mean, it seemed inoffensive to me, but I know there were concerns, and, I'm willing to hear those, of course, if there's any concerns, but,
I think a number of the concerns that were raised had to do with the adjacent property owner, since it's bordered on a residential zone.
Right.
And if in fact we were going, since the original drawing submitted had a number of trees that appeared to have been located within the area of the proposed parking space, there was some concern at the last meeting that those trees would be removed, and the adjoining residential property would then be further exposed to this commercial building on Reef Road. And I think the applicant's gone out of their way to take some very helpful pictures. I know we've been out there to look at it as well.
Right.
There have been some helpful pictures of their property to document in the file, indicating what the space is adjacent to, what fencing is there, what trees are existing there already. Commissioner Jacobs?
While we have had some issues with designated employee parking in the past, in particular, I drove by Bed Bath & Beyond today, and their entire employee area that's supposed to be for employee parking was empty while the store was in operation. Employees don't always listen. In this situation, it is a small building with a small group of tenants, and I think that they'd be more apt to comply with the employee designated parking. While this is not something that thrills me, I could go along with it.
That's the trouble, right? This is a commercial. It was a design. Commissioner Barretts?
Yeah, I would say, I understand, the applicant's desire to expand with the new tenant and the parking. In viewing the site and the pictures and going out there, I'm really not, I don't really consider that space tucked in behind the building a parking space. That being said, it's in the downtown area. It points that there's public parking available nearby. They are going to have employees that have to park somewhere, so, I appreciate it's designated employee space. I have trouble just designated in a parking space. I wish we had opportunity to vary our regulations like we do in other districts and just say they could have one less spot.
You do.
Can we get this a
This is
design?
the center design district,
Oh.
so in this district in the neighborhood, you have that.
This is a center
discretion.
design, not commercial, right,
Center
okay.
design, so we
Right, 'cause I just don't like to set a precedent of look back there. Does that really, what we consider according to a parking space that complies with our regulations? I don't really think so, so.
Can I make a comment with
Go ahead.
respect to that,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If you would otherwise be inclined to permit it because of their adjacency to Sherman Green and the parking passes that the applicant has indicated that they've acquired, you could consider, it's rather than paving that, remove the curb and maybe have them provide a gravel surface, so should they ever need to occupy that space, they have the availability to do so, but they're not required to do so.
The other alternative is they really need one extra space to be created in this specific area where the grass is right now on the side of the building.
Mhm.
We can also waive such a parking requirement that there be a space there so long as they maintain at least one parking permit in the adjacent municipal lot for use by one of the employees. That accomplishes essentially the same purpose. He indicated he has 5 of those permits now. Now he has more parking than is required. We can, and since the lot is directly adjacent to this, and we can condition it upon him maintaining one permit for use in that lot, that would satisfy, I would think, the parking, and maybe a reason to waive, because he is...
Well, again, that's at your discretion.
Off-site
The
parking.
center design district regs do allow you now the discretion to reduce the parking.
Go to my colleagues there, their thoughts on that. Commissioner Sutter?
Yeah, my experience is that our parking regulations provide actually considerably more space than is actually used by most owners of property and users of property. And it seems to me that Mr. Wendt's suggestion of having a gravel surface behind the house in the event that the space is needed might be a more practical solution than simply requiring them to get an additional permit for additional space. I think in actual practice, that gravel area may never be used. And being a poor surface, it's user-friendly, environmentally friendly. I think that's seems to be the best solution to the problem.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Another option could be grasscrete.
My only concern would be shadow and the cost and shadow. I mean, would that space, so I mean, if you have grasscrete there, is that going to be okay? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like it's a tough spot for it. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if you ever get grass to you're right, it's fairly shaded, but.
shaded area. I
much
mean,
grass there now.
it's such a small spot. I mean, usually when I think of grasscrete, I think of something that's got a lot of.
Now it's just covered with pine needles from the tree.
Yeah,
I'm
right, I
sure the
mean,
grass will grow there.
I'm with Doug, and with Jim on this. I think that, probably going with the gravel might work, but I mean, I don't want to do anything that, I don't know. I mean, Seth, do you think this sets a bad precedent? I don't know.
I think with this one, we might say, well, it's okay, and then other ones say, is that really a park? Do we really consider that a park space, or like Richard said, where they have wide open spaces, they don't park in it? Here's one where if you park there, you're pretty much not going to be able to get out when you want to get out. Is that, I don't know. I mean, it's one space.
But I'm saying there's more this larger issue you're talking about of we have the authority to do it, but you don't seem to like the idea of.
Not
waiving.
the authority of just waiving the
Requirement.
space, more than calling that a parking space.
Yeah, no, you're right. It really
I
is.
just don't, I don't like,
I
we'll
see-
have other
right.
applications in front of us, and a lot of them just does come down to
Who
parking.
knows if somebody's going to come back with, right?
I mean,
a car carrier on top of
look
somebody
at,
else's car.
we have complex
Stacked deck.
we have complex applications
Right, you're
around
right.
town, like the Brick
Right.
Walk and the place where they're maxed out on
Right.
space and
Right.
parking, and I just don't really like the tandem space. That's just
Yeah.
my opinion, that's not a parking space.
Well,
And the fact that it's an employee space and theoretically the employees will only move their cars, once a day
That's true.
at the end of the day, it's a little bit more usable, but I think you may be right. The simpler solution maybe just be to waive the space.
We
I
can
mean,
waive
we
it,
can do
we can
that.
also
But
waive.
what about the chairman's suggestion that we also ask for them at least, as part of waiving the
Yeah.
space, we ask that they at least maintain one
Yeah.
of at least one permit in perpetuity.
I think that's a
Is that
good
okay? Yeah, we're okay to do
I think
that.
that would work.
Do that.
Waive the space and one municipal permit in perpetuity would be the.
Then is there a motion to amend this, the approval, amend the approval by eliminating the proposed tandem space and by requiring that the applicant maintain at all times at least one permit in the adjacent municipal lot?
Mr. Chairman, can I amend my own motion?
Sure.
Okay, I'll do so. I'll amend my original motion for approval that we do just as you described. That is, that we will waive the space on site, the tandem space for employee parking, but in perpetuity, we ask that the applicant maintain one permit in the municipal lot, a minimum of one permit. I know they use more than that now, but a minimum of one.
Thank you. Is there a second on that amendment? Commissioner Jacobs seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, first we'll vote on the amendment, and then we will vote on the item as amended should the amendment pass. On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Amendment passes. Now on the item as amended, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of this item as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Next item on the compliance calendar is 71 Timko Street. Application of Joe Rubin to establish a food vending truck in a designed commercial district.
Okay. Timko Street, as you know, is a road which runs southerly from Kings Highway to the new train station. Citizens Auto Body is on the corner there. The applicant is seeking approval to establish a food vending truck. There were photos included in your packet from last time. This is also a carryover. All these four items are carried over from last meeting. The applicant has included photos of his existing truck in Milford at the Milford train station. He's proposing a similar truck here. It was noted on the site plan, and there's some photos showing its relative location in, I believe, emailed to you an additional packet with another brief narrative and some testimonials from customers.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to approve.
Commissioner Suter has moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Barrett, second. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacobs?
When I went down there, from their photo, you didn't necessarily notice where they were going to park the truck. There's an active driveway and a loading dock behind it. My feeling on this is that if they want to put in a food service as part of their building, they should come before us with an addition for their building and see if that flies with us. I would not be supporting this. I think it's also blocking the active driveway behind it. And it's a way of getting around building things in our town.
I had a question through staff. We have an inconsistency in the documentation submitted by the applicant. On their original papers, they indicated they would be there around 6 a.m. through lunch and dinner, breakfast at 6, through lunch and dinner, closing at 8:30 p.m. We received a supplemental document indicating that they will be there at 8:30 a.m. and return back at 4:30 p.m.
That's the creative meats. Those are the other trucks in the thing.
Oh, Creative Meats would be the trucks
Yeah,
that parked there in the
yeah,
pictures?
right,
So there's some
right,
over, I see what they're saying, those are the Creative Meat trucks, not
Correct.
catering.
So what they're trying to do is establish what the typical use of the space is, which they contend would justify their setup of this truck during those times, and it wouldn't be, impacting the typical use of the lot.
This may show quite the opposite, because this truck, the food truck, is there before Creative Meats leaves, and it's there after they return.
It is. I think
And-
that they're trying to argue that the typical use is not heavy, and that therefore their additional use would not be significant. I mean, just for my 2 cents, I agree with Commissioner Jacobs that we ought not be in the business of approving what is essentially, a fixed mobile food service station, and I'm not inclined to support the application.
Thank you. Commissioner Sutter?
Yeah, I visited the space today. It's a large lot and wide where the driveways that Mr. Jacobs is talking about. I think the truck is basically out of the way and is at a strategic location for people entering the Timco street to get to the train station. I think it'll serve a very useful purpose, and I don't see a problem with it. I'm going to be in for it.
Commissioner Barrett?
I agree with Mr. Jacobs. I don't really like the truck or the idea of the truck, or that we don't really even have any traffic experience in this area with the train station to be able to gauge it. I understand that people like, a truck, it's easy, you don't have to go inside anywhere, it's a convenience, and it would offer something, but, a lot of documents with some attractive menus doesn't really get around that this is a truck, and I'm just not inclined to support it, given the lack of experience we have with this area and that type of use.
I would agree. I would agree with Commissioner Barrett and Commissioner Jacobs. And this raises an issue I think we have to talk about in our planning that we're going to be convening right after the election. We talked about a few things, one being the neon lights that are suddenly appearing in Fairfield inside windows, which we have to deal with. The second is, at least I've gotten some comments about a truck that parks downtown on a public street selling items, how we allow something like that as a zoning commission. Well, that's another interesting issue, whether it's on a street, whether we in fact even have jurisdiction to zone something on a street. That may be more of a police power, health department power, or an ordinance power of the RTM. So we have to talk a little bit about that aspect of trucks as well, how we're going to deal with that issue, part of our planning.
Well, another aspect of the application that was concerning to me was that, they submit that they're going to put up a slow sign as a reminder in the lot, and they're gonna, quote, "add heavy potted plants in front of the food truck to show customers where to stand." I mean, it has all the trappings of a permanent installation, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah, make no mistake, they don't intend to move this on a daily basis.
That's what I'm saying.
No, I want to make that clear. I mean, they're clear about that, at least in their proposal, in our discussion, that it's going to be there. That doesn't leave at the end of the day and come back in the morning.
So,
It's,
you know,
they lock it up and it stays there. It's
And
not,
close the shutter, and whether the tires are full with air or not, it doesn't really matter, because the thing's not moving anywhere. Anyway.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission on this item? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
What's the
I'm sorry.
motion?
The motion is to approve. That's good. The motion is to approve 71 Timco Street application of Joe Rubin to establish a food vending truck in a design commercial district. So a vote in the affirmative is a vote to approve the truck in that location.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Abstentions? Item fails, 1 approved, 1 in favor, 6 opposed. Next item, 330 Grasmere Avenue, application of H East Parcel LLC for an amended sign plan in a design commercial district.
okay, this is a proposal to amend the sign plan for the whole food site to include signs on the rear of the middle building, the rear wall of which is parallel to and adjacent to Kings Highway. The proposed signs are identical in style, but smaller than those approved on the front of the building. They're all uniform in size. Tabled this last time, there was some discussion about the treatment of the facade. We indicated that there was a paint scheme that had been implemented on there to indicate a couple of horizontal and then vertical separations in the back. And again, tabled it for you guys to go out and take a look for a further evaluation.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item? Going once.
I'll move to approve it.
Commissioner Barrett has moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Suter has seconded. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Jacobs?
Since there had been discussion about possibly there being stone where the paint scheme is, or possibly some hedge where the fence is, I went and did some Photoshop work with some photos, which I'd like to pass through. The top on each one is where it is now. The bottom on each one is ideas of what could be. Because the other problem there is that between the dumpsters and the porta potties, and this is facing one of our roads, it is not a very pretty location.
Could I just make a quick comment on the dumpsters and the porta potties? They're temporary. That's just for people doing the interior work. They're not going to stay there.
What are they going to do with the garbage from the store?
Well, there is going to be a trash enclosure
Right.
back there, but
Yeah.
the porta potties are
But
not
the,
permanent.
right, everything you see there now is just for the work that's being done internal to the building.
Hold those up.
There's going to be a trash enclosure somewhere
No,
on the
there's a trash enclosure at the rear of this building. It's
It'll
going to be permanent.
It'll be screened, yeah.
With a fence around it. I mean,
Should probably come down this way with him, too.
Yeah.
but yeah, the red dumpster you see there is not a permanent installation.
Porta potties are not.
I mean, that's a transformer in the back that is permanent, but the green thing is permanent, the red dumpster and the porta potties are not, for what it's worth. Okay, I don't know if everybody saw those on the other side.
What I'll do is for Fair TV, I'll just hold these up. You want to zoom in on them? So will that help you?
The top photo is how it is today. The one underneath is suggestions.
To the public, while they're doing this, we're lucky enough to have Fair TV covering all of the meetings of this commission, our bi-monthly meeting. You can catch us on channel
79, I think we're on right now at 9 o'clock in the morning. We appear to be getting thinner at each meeting. It's because of the camera angle. Or, Commissioner Wagner's correct. You can also log on to Fair TV On Demand to see the meeting anytime you want. It's up there now under the Fair TV Government folder, or you can just search generally.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this item, Commissioner Suter?
Yeah, I visited the location today and drove completely around the building and on the Kings Highway and around the corner. The buildings are clearly visible from Kings Highway. I think the whole intent of the signs is to help people identify the location of stores in the complex from Kings Highway. They face out towards the railroad tracks and the roadway, so they're not bothering any neighbors. And my experience with most shopping malls is that they do have identification signs on the rear of buildings. It's a common practice, so I don't see any problem with this proposal.
Thank you. Any other member of the commission have any comment?
Yeah,
Commissioner
just briefly.
Barrett.
Yeah, so as I looked at it, I thought we probably didn't do enough during the hearing and all the conditions we imposed to deal with the fact that we really had a building that really had frontage on both sides, and it has a back, and the back, borders a main road, and it doesn't really look that good right now. That being said, I don't think it's going to look worse with having the signs up there for signage. I wish they could take some of Mr. Jacobs' suggestions in terms of, some screening or doing a little more with the facade. But as far as the signs themselves, I don't see them being detrimental to the appearance. And as long as they comply with our sign regulations, we'd be inclined to support them.
Any other discussion by any member of the commission? Commissioner Jacobs?
While I would agree that the signs, since they are going to be smaller versions of what's on the other side of the building, I really don't have a problem with it. I'm hoping that they will take this suggestion and run with it, in particular the hedge, which shouldn't be that large of a cost for them, and would add a lot to the visuals as driving down that road. And if staff hears anything from the owner of the property that they would like copies of this, they will be available.
Yeah, if you want to pass those down to us, we'd be happy to forward
Put 'em
them
in
to
the
the applicant.
Or they can go to fairtv.com and
Take a look at
download
them
the
again.
screenshot.
Right, so we did a screenshot.
Is there any further discussion of this item by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Last item, under compliances, 85 Mill Plain Road, application of 85 Pond Mill LLC to modify a condition of sign approval.
Again, also a carryover from the last meeting. This application is a request to modify a condition of approval for the wall signs at Signage, which is the freestanding building at the Sportsplex, which originally prohibited illumination. The signs were installed in violation of that condition. In fact, they are at least temporarily illuminated, presents an opportunity to evaluate the impact. The signs are proposed to be turned off at closing, which is 7 p.m. Tuesday through Friday and 5 p.m. on Saturday. They were off. They had turned them off previous to the last meeting, so we had asked them to turn them back on so you'd have a chance to evaluate that. And if you recall from your previous packet, they did solicit one letter from a neighbor across the street that didn't feel it was, they couldn't tell because there's so much ambient light where they're at anyway, the traffic light and the street light out in front, that they didn't think it was onerous to them.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Canales moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioner Owens has seconded. Any discussion?
I'll start off.
Commissioner Canales?
Well, first, I've walked past there while the Signage sign was on, but I left each night to go over to the rec center to get ready to go running. And it didn't strike me as particularly gaudy. One of the nights, I passed and actually spoke with a mom and was leaving with her daughter coming back across it's Ludlow. I'm trying to think what's
Ludlow
this-
Court is the street
Ludlow
up
Court. They were coming back, and I asked her what her neighbor's reaction. She said, and the neighbors said at that time, that they didn't find it particularly distracting. And that's certainly no careful survey. But I just happened to come across someone, and their reaction wasn't, "Oh my gosh, it's horrible." That was my personal take on it. It doesn't stay up all night. It's only up. Okay.
People are having
Oh,
trouble
I'm sorry.
hearing.
I apologize.
We're getting
A lot of feedback. I'm sorry.
again.
But the sign is not a late night sign, and it didn't strike me as terribly out of character. So I don't have a problem.
Thank you, Commissioner Canales. Commissioner Owens?
Yeah, I would agree. Also, the fact that it is so far back from the road and from residences, if the store is open, it's bright anyway. You'll see all these lights on because it's also a tall building, but it's just a bright structure in and of itself, and the signs don't seem to add much more light to it at all. So the fact that it is set back so far and its hours are very reasonable, it's not open till 11 o'clock at night or anything, it doesn't seem to be a problem.
Thank you, Commissioner Owens. Commissioner Jacobs?
I have a number of problems with it. One is that they didn't follow our approval. And there's, I don't like the idea of, oh, they don't follow our approval, they build it, and then they say, well, it's up, so now look at it, it's really not so bad. When are they going to start putting up buildings that way? Not getting our approval, building them, and say, well, you see, it's not so bad. I also see this as more creep into a residential neighborhood. While it might not be that bad, it is a first step of the creep into the neighborhood. I won't be supporting this, and my feeling is that if it were to fail, that they could come back in a year and try again.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Commissioner Suter?
Yeah, my only concern about this is one of intent. I'm always bothered about whether or not some mistake happened accidentally on purpose. And I don't know, I don't have enough information to know one way or the other whether that's going on here. Because it is important, as Commissioner Jacobs has said, to maintain our regulations. On the other hand, if those who have observed it and might feel it's basically unobjectionable and the neighbors have not complained, I really have no particular feeling one way or the other as to whether or not to oppose it or not. So,
Thank you. Any final comment? Commissioner
Yeah,
Barnes?
I'm agree with Mr. Jacobs. I'm not going to support this just because it was in the condition of approval, and whether it was a miscommunication or a mistake or not, they lit it up. I don't really like it lit up. I understand it won't be for many hours. If we were going to approve this, I'd suggest that we limit it to either the hours of operation or the hours stated in the letter. I think that would be reasonable. I mean, that is one thing in its favor. It's not going to be on very much. It's 7 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock on Saturday, so it's in the summer months, it would not even be illuminated.
Do we need to make that a change? Because I welcome that. Because
Well,
I
it's part of their
thought simply by
application.
approving this, we're approving it until 7 and it goes off at 7. Is
It's
that
part
not
of their
the case?
request, but you could certainly reiterate
Beef
that
that
as a
up?
condition of approval,
Sure.
should you choose to approve it.
Well, I accept that condition.
What is, again, for the record, your condition? This would be an amendment.
I'm not, he would have to oppose the amendment.
Okay.
Anyone can amend. Anyone can amend.
Anyway.
Oh, okay, well, the amendment being that we specifically state that the lighted sign for Cinch only is lit until 7 p.m., which is the end of the hours of operation for Cinch.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Tuesday through Friday, 5 p.m. on
Yeah,
Saturday.
5 p.m., so 7 and 5. They come back to us if they try to extend the hours of operation, want to extend the sign or something. Just saying. Just saying.
Does you're going to, is that an amendment or a condition? Is that your motion? You're going to incorporate that into your motion?
Let's incorporate it into the motion then if that's possible.
And your second, who seconded that?
That was me, that's
Is
fine.
that acceptable? Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this item? I'm inclined to vote no for the same reasons for several reasons. One is, I don't know what part of no they didn't understand the first time. It's like talking to my kids sometimes. No means no. But more importantly, it is a well-lit structure, and when that restaurant or the business is open, you're going to know it's open. The lights are on. You can see it. This just sounds like another encroachment into residential areas of advertising by putting an illuminated sign up with your name on it. I think that's all we're trying to do is attract attention from people. And you have a residential neighborhood there, and this is the first step down a troubling road if we proceed with this. If we start putting more signs up as more businesses go there, I don't think that's something that we should be doing at this location. That being said, all in favor of this item with the 7 o'clock condition that was put on it, signify by saying aye.
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 And that's Commissioner Kennelly. Commissioner Owens. Opposed?
Nay.
Commissioner Jacobs, Leclerc, Wagner, Suter, and Barrett. So the item fails. There being no other items on our agenda for executive session, we will stand in a brief recess. To the members of the public, we're going to take about a 5-minute recess. We have to reconfigure the room for the public hearing, set the microphones up, and then we'll begin the public hearing. We'll stand in adjournment to then. If I could just see Mr. Green and Mr. Fallon for us during the break, I want to talk to you gentlemen about something. Back in session again. For the record, this is the October 25th, 2011 meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We're here for our public hearing. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight for public hearing, which we will all consider together. The first is 4185 Black Rock Turnpike, application of New Way Associates LLC to establish a neighborhood design district on land presently zoned residence AAA. Second is zoning regulation amendment, application of New Way Associates LLC to amend section 12.10.3.2 of the zoning regulations. And third, 4185 Black Rock Turnpike, special permit application of Fairfield Gateway LLC pertaining to the construction of a 2-story medical building. Just so the public knows how we are proceeding tonight, we begin our public hearing tonight on this application, on these 3 applications. The applicant goes first and gets to present their case in the order they choose to present it. They can put on any expert witnesses they choose to bring and any other testimony they deem appropriate. The Commission can ask questions at any time of the applicant. Upon conclusion of the applicant's case, any member of the public will have an opportunity to speak to us as a Commission. If the members of the public have any questions, they should address them to us as the Commission, and we can ask the applicant if we feel it's appropriate. The public does not get a chance to cross-examine the applicant or his witnesses. Once the public has an opportunity to speak, we will then go back to the applicant. He will have the final chance for a rebuttal to present any final information to us as a Commission. Given the number of people here, we may not finish this tonight. We have an 11 o'clock deadline. We did have a little caucus with Attorney Green representing some of the neighbors and Attorney Fallon during the break. If we do not finish tonight, the Commission will be meeting next Tuesday, November 1st, and we will continue the hearing at that time at 7:30 where we left off. This would be the first item and only item on the agenda next Tuesday at 7:30. Location, we'll have to announce that. Hopefully we can get this building. We'll have to confirm that we can get this building, but we'll have it on the website. So that being said, we begin with Attorney Fallon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, members of the public. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm here tonight representing the named applicant and property owner. And the proposal before you, in its essence, is 3 applications leading to approval for the construction of 2 medical office buildings comprising a total of 35,043 square feet at the property which is located at 4185 Black Rock Turnpike. Let me speak to you a few minutes about the property. It's currently zoned, as you know from the zone map that's been submitted, partially in the neighborhood design business district, with a substantial balance of the property, which comprises over 17 acres, being zoned residence AAA. It is, as you know, directly adjacent to the Merritt Parkway. It is, as you know, directly across the street from the Hi-Ho Motel and the Barcelona Bar and Restaurant. Its adjacent neighbors include the Greenfield Hunt Condominium Association and other residential uses as you go up Black Rock Turnpike. It is, I submit to you, in 35 years, as classic an example of a transitional piece of property as I can ever remember seeing. And that's why, as you wear your zoning hats throughout this process, as you always do and should, I know you will wear your planning hats. Because we have an 18-acre piece of property on Route 58 that is already partially zoned commercial and to which some use is going to have to be put because the owners of the nursery are retiring and selling the property. So I ask you to keep that in mind. I also say respectfully, not trying to anticipate things that perhaps are better left for rebuttal, that to call this Greenfield Hill is inaccurate and misleading. This is not Greenfield Hill. I live about a half a mile from this site, a mile, off of Burr Street on Woodhouse Road. I've lived there for 25 years. I go to church in Greenfield Hill, I live in Greenfield Hill, I shop in Greenfield Hill, I walk in Greenfield Hill, and I have for 30 years. I know where Greenfield Hill is, and this is not Greenfield Hill. Let's talk about the applications, which the chairman has well stated for the call. There's 3 applications here which you're going to have to decide on in the order that they are presented. There's the application to amend the zone map in order to extend the neighborhood design business district portion of the property by approximately 80,000 square feet so as to accommodate the proposed construction of the medical office buildings, which you'll hear about presently. The balance of the property, as I'll elaborate on, will remain AAA zoned. There is, secondly, an application to amend Section 12.10.3.2 of your regulations to allow you as a commission the discretion to allow off-street parking in front of a building in the neighborhood design business district. When you established Section 12.10, the architectural and community appearance standards, you adopted Section 12.10.3.2 to limit the location in that zone of off-street parking behind or to the side of a proposed structure. This amendment, which we seek tonight, will leave, in fact, that particular element of intention in place. But what we do ask you to do is to add language as follows. Quote, "The Commission may adjust the aforesaid requirements to particular circumstances of lot lines, topography, soil conditions, and site design while preserving the purpose and intent of the regulations." This discretion, which we ask you to give yourself in the regulation amendment, is consistent with the approach that you have taken in other sections of the regulations with regard to such discretionary site design considerations. For example, in Section 12.10.3, you set forth, 12.10.3.1, you set forth a good deal of material with regard to the number of spaces and whatnot. But then you say the Commission has the discretion to reduce that parking. In that same section, Section 12.10.3.5.a, you say light posts and illumination shall be a maximum combined of 12 feet. This height, however, may at the Commission's discretion be higher if there are no off-site lighting effects. Most importantly, if you look at Section 28.10 of your regulations, where you talk about parking, you provide generally that except as necessary, driveway entrances except for parking spaces provided in connection with a dwelling or lease room, all parking and loading spaces shall be maintained minimum setback of 10 feet from any street line. But then you go on to say, and this is the language that I'm using in my amendment, the Commission may adjust the aforesaid requirement to particular circumstances of lot lines, topography, soil conditions, and site design while preserving the purpose and intent of the regulations. That's exactly the language that I set forth in my amendment. Now, why do we do that? We do that for the following reason. We've been working on this application for well over a year and a half. And a very important part of that application has been an outreach to the stakeholders relative to this development. We've talked to our neighbors numerous times. We've talked to the Merritt Parkway Conservancy. We've talked to the Greenfield Hill Village Improvement Society. And part of the feedback that we received early on from the society in particular was a preference, without commitment, but a preference that anything would be done here with the extension being of the existing neighborhood design business district, and not seeking a zone change to the commercial area, to the design commercial district, although the property all across the street happens to be zoned in the design commercial district. The spirit with which we've been wanting to operate here, and I think as you will hear tonight with a great deal of success, made us actually obviously want to accommodate that consideration. But of course, the parking regulations that I've asked you to amend are specific to the neighborhood design district. If the property were zoned in the design commercial district, we could put the parking in the front. So that in order to accommodate the preference and the protective preference, which I'll talk about in a minute, of the neighbor's suggestion, we have sought an extension of the existing zone of the neighborhood design district. But in order to do that, we need the relief from this amendment that is provided. And why is that? If we could not put some of that parking in the front, if it all had to be placed in the side or the rear, that's a good... I thought maybe my time was up. Then you maybe would get one of those. Then we'd have to shift the building itself in a manner that, as you know, Jack's, I think, presentation will point out, would be aesthetically detrimental and inconsistent with our overall design intent that we've worked very hard on to ensure that the building will have very limited visibility and visual impacts. So that's the second component. And then lastly, there is the special permit and site plan application. Assuming the passage of the first two applications, then obviously medical use is a permitted use in the neighborhood design district pursuant to section 12.5.2. Maintaining the commercial zoning of the property as neighborhood design business district permits business uses that, as you know, are more limited than allowed in the more general design commercial district. And this limitation of permitted uses, along with the very substantial buffer of residence AAA property that will remain, ensures that the permitted transitional use that we propose of this business portion of the property for medical offices will, in fact, be in harmony with and not have any adverse consequences on the neighborhood. Now, I've said a number of times the balance of the property is going to remain zoned residence AAA. Who says so? I also pointed out a minute ago that we had entered into a dialogue with numerous constituencies, one of whom was and is the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, represented by Mr. Green. We've committed to the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, and that does look daunting.
Just pass it down.
And to this record, this is the exhibit that is referenced. What you'll see, and I commend that to you to read when you have an opportunity, it memorializes certain commitments that we have made to the Conservancy with regard to landscaping and lighting. Most importantly, I believe in paragraph 9. Oh, he does. He actually, matter of fact, what he did was he gave me, I'll give one to the chairman. This is exactly the same document. We both jointly drafted this, but he feels it might be somewhat better formatted just in terms of the signature line. So the contents of this document, in terms of its language, is identical. So I don't get in trouble with Mr. Green. This is his version, but there's absolutely no difference except in the formatting. But again, to call your attention to paragraph 9 of this particular prescriptive covenant, which, if this application is granted, we will record on the land record. Now, I know, probably as a legal matter, subject to discussing with your counsel, I don't know if you can, as a condition of approval, mandate that. But I can tell you, as a practitioner for 35 years who makes his living before this commission based upon credibility, representing a group of local property owners, including Mr. Richter, who you'll hear from who lives a half mile from this site and who runs a business, a family business for many generations right up the street, this will be recorded. And what we say in there, among other things, is that the balance of the property, which we refer to as Parcel B, that's all of the property except for the front strip, which is presently zoned neighborhood design, and the strip that we ask you to extend, will in perpetuity be maintained as Residence AAA, and there will be no request by anyone in the future for a zone change of that property. Then we go to another level. We say that even in the Residence AAA zone, the only use to which that property can be put by way of application to you would be for up to 5 single-family homes.
What's the total lot size of Parcel B?
14 point something acres, Mr. Wagner. And that means that we forego the special exception uses that we might seek here. Now, between you and me, I'm not an engineer. You could entertain a question to Mr. Jobst. I'm not so sure that taking into consideration topography and wetlands, you could get 5 houses there. But, you know, theoretically, do the math, that's it. But the point that I'm making here is, this is not a paper tiger. Oh yeah, they say the property's going to remain residentially zoned. How do we know we're not setting a precedent? Who's coming in 2 years from now or 5 years from now and saying, well, now we want to push it here? Or how do we know that they're not going to come in with some intense special exception use, a convalescent hospital or something like that? Well, we are not. And one of the main reasons we're not doing that, to be honest with you, is we have a wonderful opportunity here as a community. This is not some multi-state developer, you know, out of New York or Boston or wherever, not that there's anything generically wrong with them. This is a group of local guys. The prime mover of this, whose vision for this project has been Mr. Richter, who, as I said, lives a half a mile away and makes his living up on Black Rock Turnpike selling real estate. The architect is Jack. He lives up the hill. The lawyer is me. I live up the hill. We have a stake, not only in this application, but we got a stake in what happens to this property. And I'll get further into that in a minute. But suffice it to say that if these applications are approved by you and the approvals become final, that restrictive covenant will be recorded before any process is undertaken with regard to site development. And so that means at the end of the day, that the portion of the property that is already zoned neighborhood design district with another approximately 2 acres will be the subject of the medical office buildings that you're going to hear about in a minute, and the rest of the property will in perpetuity be limited to single-family home development not to exceed 5.
Val, could you or Mr. Huntington comment on a question the commission has on this map that you handed? It appears, Mr. Jobst, it appears, I'm not sure that the streets are labeled right. Congress Street is drawn to the above the Merritt Parkway. That doesn't matter.
That's the original right-of-way of Congress Street.
Right where the Merritt Parkway is located?
Constructed.
Okay.
And that's still a right-of-way. And basically, that's where the entrance road to the Merritt is, southbound. That's the old roadbed of Congress Street prior to construction of the Merritt Parkway. And that right-of-way continues up as the entrance ramp goes toward the left. The Congress Street right-of-way bears toward the right.
Oh, so Congress Street right-of-way is on is not only where Congress Street is, but it's where that years ago there used to be a house up there on that
Correct.
side. That was
The house is still there.
the house is
And
still there.
that
Okay.
was fronted on the old Congress
We
Street.
used to call that because we had multiple Congress Streets, not only crossing the Black Rock Turnpike, but on both sides of the Merritt then for a portion at least.
Right.
So this map shows the right-of-way for the old Congress Street, where the entrance ramp to the southbound is now located. That's why it's drawn like this.
That's correct.
Essentially.
And one of the things Mr. Galante will testify to is, you know, obviously we've had numerous very positive reviews with the DOT on this, and one of the things they like very much is the approval of this application will also mean that that old house will come down, and that very strange and somewhat dangerous situation on the Merrick Parkway entrance ramp there, you know, will be eliminated, because the house will be eliminated, and we won't have to maintain an access for that house. And the DOT obviously thinks that's a very good thing. So what do we come up with here? And we come up with a use, I submit to you, that's going to be very consistent with the area, the hotel and restaurant and bar across the street, and with the commercial utilization of the property that's been ongoing there for many, many decades. Also, we think the building designed by Mr. Franzen that's going to be presented to you in a minute is going to be and provide a very significant visual enhancement, to the extent it is visible at all, to this gateway location to our town. And as I said before, the thrust here is to keep control of the ultimate utilization of this large and important parcel in the hands of this commission and this community. Let's have this decision made by this commission, and let's have it implemented by local people with roots in the community and roots in this neighborhood. Because there are other options with regard to that that I find as a resident, I'm here getting paid, I know, I'm representing the client, but I have a stake here, I live here, I've lived here for 25 years. I know what I want to see on this piece, and I know what I don't want to see. Now, we did retain Jack, and we did that because we wanted to make a special commitment, and we think by retaining him, we speak to that, to ensure that the very specific considerations and emphasis be given to the architectural and community appearance standards that you adopted and encoded in section 12.2. And I think, as Jack reviews with you, the architectural design, the building materials, the facades, the windows, the roofs, and the elements of his creative effort, we'll see that that has certainly been done. And the end result will be an extremely attractive building that will not have great visibility, but will have positive impact on this area and improve the streetscape, while at the same time taking for perpetuity this large piece out of play, because you'll have a medical use as referenced here in this application, and the balance of the property is left as residence AAA property, restrictively covenanted to no more than 5 homes. We've submitted a landscaping and lighting plan that Jack will review with you momentarily, and we did receive unanimous approval from the Inland Wetlands Agency for our inland wetlands permit, which is IWP 2010-1101. Our presentation tonight will involve Walter Jobst, who I'll introduce in a second, of the Huntington Company, who will review with you the existing and proposed site conditions, site engineering. Then the aforementioned Jack Franzen, who will talk about the architectural design, landscaping, and lighting. And then Michael Galanti of Frederick P. Clark and Associates, who will review with you the findings of his previously submitted traffic and access analysis. And then I'll return for a few summary comments, and we'll all answer any questions that you might have. So at this time, let me introduce Walter Jobst of the Huntington Company.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Walter Jobst. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor in the state of Connecticut. I'm employed by the Huntington Company, which has offices here in Fairfield. I'd like to walk you through existing and then proposed conditions. This is the site as it currently exists. The darker shaded areas are the buildings. The lighter shaded areas, the gravel parking lot and drive that's associated with the plant factory. We have this corner in the neighborhood design district. The remainder of the property is in the AAA resident zone. The site slopes from the south to the north toward Black Rock Turnpike. We have a a rock face ledge along the southwest property line of our property. We have another a ledge face along the southeast portion of the site here. We have currently sanitary sewers in Black Rock Turnpike and some stormwater drainage down at the intersection of Congress Street, Black Rock Turnpike, and the Merritt Parkway entrance. The proposal is to raise the existing buildings and construct two new buildings for medical offices. These will total 35,000 square feet. We'll have a parking area along the front north side of the building. We'll have parking underneath both structures, and we'll have a raised parking area to the southwest that'll access the second floor of the westerly building. The rest of the access will be at grade along the front. As part of our proposal, we have a stormwater management plan. It will consist of several different items. First, in the stormwater treatment train will be our catch basins, which will collect the runoff from the parking lot and parking areas. Those catch basins will have 3-foot sumps and siphon hoods, which will collect and clean a portion of the stormwater runoff, filter out and any suspended solids, float any oils that are in the road. That will then drain toward two hydrodynamic separators, which will again clean the runoff off of the parking areas. The roof runoff, because it is relatively clean, will be piped directly into our detention system. Those are shown here, hatched, light hatching, two separate systems. As part of those systems, there will be what we call a isolator row, which is a row of underground chambers, hydraulically separate from the remainder of the detention system. Again, a third level of cleansing of stormwater runoff. The detention systems are designed to reduce off-site discharge as well as renovate the stormwater runoff. We have compared the 2-year post-development discharges to the 1-year pre-development discharges, the 10-year post-development discharges to the 2-year pre-development discharges, and on the remainder of the storms from the 1-year to the 100-year storm, we have compared existing and proposed runoff. In all those comparisons, the post-construction peak flows are reduced substantially from their pre-development discharge. Reason being is there is no detention system on site presently. There are no measures present that would clean and renovate stormwater runoff. So basically anything that falls on the site runs off the site as it is and into the drainage system. So we're providing a marked improvement to not only runoff quantity but runoff quality. In addition, we've taken a look at the 1-inch rainfall and the amount of runoff associated with that. We've sized our detention system to retain on site that 1-inch rainfall. Reason being is 80 to 90% of stormwater events in any given year are of 1 inch or less, and so our thought there was that if we retain on site 80% of the rainfall we're going to get in any one year, you reduce the runoff and flooding possibilities downstream, as well as maintaining on site any pollutants or toxins that might be associated with that runoff. We've compared our design with the recommendations of the DEP's 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Manual, and in all instances comply with those recommendations in this design and meet those requirements. Also, we will, as I said before, there's an existing sanitary sewer in Black Rock Turnpike. Both of our structures will be connected to that system, and all the other utilities will be brought onto site and service the new construction. If there are any questions, you want to take them now or later?
Any questions, Mr. Joe? Mr. Davis?
Can you again go over how much, what rainfall you're set to handle, how much rainfall?
We've designed this to handle up to and including the 100-year storm event, and there will be a reduction.
How much rainfall? How many inches of rain?
7.2 inches of rain in a 24-hour period.
Thank you.
Commissioner Canella.
To make sure I understand this just broadly, Mr. Jobs, a 35,000 square foot medical office building will be better for the surrounding environment than a current nursery? That's what you're saying?
From a stormwater management
perspective.
aspect, yes, because currently there is nothing to reduce flows from the site or cleans flows from the site. The buildings themselves won't accomplish that, but our stormwater management system that's coupled with that building construction will.
Thank you. Commissioner Parker?
I believe at one time there was...
Commissioner Parker, if you could just use the microphone so the public can hear you.
Oh,
Sorry. Thank you.
sorry.
Commissioner Dodd.
Is it on?
Yeah.
I believe historically there had been some flooding problems on the other side of Black Rock Turnpike below the Merritt Parkway, and I don't know if those issues have been repaired or if it's an ongoing problem with water there. And will you be contributing any runoff?
Well, the runoff presently from this site goes into the state drainage system, which on the other side of Black Rock Turnpike ties into Cricker Brook, which is, I think, what you're referring to as far as flooding problems. Right now, everything that runs off site into that watershed. What we're proposing is to reduce the runoff, hold it back, and meter it out at a slower rate to reduce the occurrence and the frequency of flooding, if not eliminate it altogether, based on what we are contributing.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions of Mr. Joe? No, sir, the public doesn't get to ask questions at this time of any witnesses. Hearing none from the Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Joe.
Just before I introduce Mr. President, Commissioner Canelli's question is a good one, but the answer is not counterintuitive. Your record would indicate, obviously, that this application has been reviewed by the town engineering department that's approved it. But the other thing is, Mr. Wendt and Mr. Devanchik, is the inland wetlands permit actually part of the record? That would be the conditional approval, inland wetland permit 2010-11-01, October 12, 2010. If not, I've got a copy. So I'll make it. Because I think that the confirmation of the answer to that question, not only from a stormwater standpoint, but from an environmental standpoint, lies in this document. And you can review that at your pleasure. But this was the process or product of a formal application for inland wetlands approval, full application, staff review, staff comments, and staff recommendation for approval, which is embodied here. So I think it speaks well to the fact that, yes, from an environmental standpoint, a better situation. by far.
Mr. Canelli, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
And what I want to do now is introduce Mr. Franzen. I said before, we retained Jack well over a year ago because we wanted to come up with a building that was sensitive to the community standards that you established and a good building for this location. We're very proud of the building he designed, and I'm going to ask the commissioners to pass on. Jack is going to be referring to certain materials, but for your convenience, we provided you those copies for everyone. So if you each want to take one from the top and one from the bottom, that'd be great.
Mr. Fallon, for the record, are these the same documents we already have in our file, albeit they're smaller versions?
They are, and there's one or two that are color renderings that are new, and they're going to be up here, but I wanted you to have those. So the plans are unchanged, but some of the renderings are enhanced.
And does Mr. Green have the enhanced rendering?
I will make sure he does, because I'm sure there's extras when you get that.
If we have any extras, we would put them on the table for Mr. Green and any of the public, so they want to take a look at the colored rendering.
Thank you.
Mr. Franz, if you could just hold off a second so we can circulate these, so we have them in front of us. Jim dropped them all. And we'll keep one for the record and then put the rest on the table. Mr. Green and anyone else who would like to. Attorney Green. Mr. Back there, Mr. We have a few extra copies if any member of the public wants to take a look, perhaps, and pass it around. These are, what they are, they're reduced versions of what's been submitted for the packet already, and I believe reduced versions of what you'll be seeing on the board in a minute. You may proceed, Mr. Franzen, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Jack Franzen. I'm here tonight as the architect for this project. And as you look at the handouts, the bigger set is the set of architectural drawings reduced at a smaller scale for your convenience, and then there's another smaller packet with 3 pieces. And what I did is I went on Google Earth and I did a print of aerial shot of the intersection, and then another one that's a little more close-up that I thought might be particularly helpful in understanding the site. And then the third is a photograph that, sure, okay. The first 2 are Google Earth images, and then, can everybody hear okay?
Try a little bit, maybe you want to aim it up a little bit. You got to get really close to it and aim it up a little bit.
Okay, how's that?
I know it's difficult, you have to really talk into it. So.
Yeah, I know there's another one here too.
Well, with the other microphone, we have 2 systems. One is for TV, but the amplification and recording mic is the big one in front of you. That's the important one.
Okay.
This is the one for...
That's for us.
For their recorder. Yeah. Okay, so maybe, yeah, I'll just...
You can take it off there if you want to hold it, if that's easier for you.
So, as you look at those handouts, as I said before, there's 2
You got you shut it off, I think.
It's on.
That's it. Okay. Do that.
Okay, there's 2 Google Earth images, one large and one small, and then there's a third photograph that I'll explain later. As John and Walt explained, the project is located at the intersection of Congress Street and Black Rock Turnpike, and it's also exit 44 on the Merritt Parkway. At this point, the Merritt runs almost north-south. It sort of curves and you know, it does actually go north and south at that point. The property is and has been a nursery at this location for many years, and a garden supply store where they sell seeds, and what I spend many a spring morning there buying tomato sprouts, etc. Right now there's a jumble of buildings that Walt showed on his plan. The buildings stretch you know, to the west from the intersection, and then there's the large gravel parking lot at the extreme west end. There is a plastic-covered Quonset-style building that you can see that's clearly visible in the Google Earth image, and that's actually on state property, that building. It's mostly on state property. So it's down here somewhere. If you look at our site plan, I'm not sure how it ended up there. What we're proposing is a new two-building medical use project. On the application, it's listed as a building of 331 feet. And the reason being is that the buildings are connected by a transparent glass breezeway consisting of a 36 by 39 foot rectangle. That contains shared stairs, elevator, and ADA compliant toilet facilities. Building number 1, which is here, runs parallel to the Merritt Parkway and Route 58, parallel to the Merritt Parkway, and it's 148 feet long from end to end and 72 feet deep this way. It has an angled connection to building number 2, actually to the glass shared portion that connects it to building number 2. Building number 2 runs parallel to the Hi-Ho this way, and it's 72 feet deep as well, and it's 128 feet in length. As I mentioned, the two structures are connected, making the balance of the length. By comparison, right now the site is occupied by a complex of barns and growing structures that I think add up to about 142 feet. And I got that off of Google Earth, so it may not be exact. In addition, there is a large shed that I mentioned, which is the plastic-covered Quonset structure that's partly on state land. For comparison, that Quonset structure, which you see, is right now is 75 feet from the westbound ramp, or the southbound ramp to the Merritt. The proposed building, this one here, building number 1, will be almost 100 feet from Route 58 and 80 feet from the on-ramp. Here's the on-ramp here. It'll also be about 275 feet from the Merritt Parkway itself. The long assemblage of structures at the plant factory that I mentioned before is currently 75 feet from Route 58. Proposed building number 2, this building here, will be about 85 feet from Route 58. The buildings are designed to follow the topography. As Walter said, there's a steep incline on this site. Building number 1 is 2 stories because it's on the lower grade and has a lower parking level. Both stories of this building are 11,200 square feet gross area. The parking level has 23 cars, plus there are 2 accessible spaces. Building number 2, which is a 1-story building, which also has a parking level, and because of the topography, it's lines up roof line wise with building number 1, but it's a shorter building. This structure has 9,230 square feet of gross tenant area and a lower parking level of 16 spaces plus 1 accessible space and also a van space. This building is as well being serviced by the glass breezeway in the middle and has on-grade pedestrian scaled entry that faces north, which is actually over here. Because at that end, it's really a very small presentation. Architectural samples. I'm going to have John Stevens come by and show you the architectural samples.
Mr. Franzi, you talked about the topography, reducing the number of floors. I don't have any elevations on the smaller sheet of the back of the building. I guess that would be the west side.
Yeah.
Is this going to be cut into the hill because of the distance you're putting it back?
Yes, it is.
So what would one see from the other side of the building? Is there an elevation?
Yeah,
showing
we
that?
do have an elevation of that. I'm not sure this is the one you're asking about. This is actually the western side of the building. So if you
Yeah,
were
that's the
coming,
narrow side. That's if you're coming south.
coming from the reservoir towards the intersection. And what you're asking, I think, is if you were up on the hillside looking down at the building, what would you see?
Would you see a similar one-story structure from that back side
You
of the building?
would, yeah. Yes, so it's this middle drawing here. And there's actually a ramp, there's a walkway behind the building because one of the means of egress is to come out the back of the building and come onto that ramp. And that won't be visible from a public way.
And then on the other side, for building one would see 2 stories from that back. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or would it be
I think
one
we have-
story as well?
It might be 3, because it's a garage.
I think it's cut. Or maybe 3. Did you see? I don't know if you see the garage from the back of the other side or not.
Yeah, I don't believe you'd see the garage, so it looked like 2 from the back and 3 from, if you count the parking level from the front.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Thanks. Could you go back to the color one we have?
Sure.
Not the small one, but this, yeah, the next one back.
You want a pointer?
So, all the way to the right. So, right.
On the top or the bottom?
So, these windows right here,
Yes.
those are to the parking garage?
Those are actually shuttered. They've got shutters on them. They look like windows, but they're actually openings into the parking. They're ventilation for the parking level.
Got it.
So this is actually the tenant space here.
Right.
There's parking below.
So, in building number 1, then, you have 1 level of parking down here.
That's
and then
correct.
2 levels of tenant space.
That's correct.
And in building 2, this first level is all parking, and the second level is tenant space.
That's right.
So 1 level of tenant space in building number 2.
Correct. And then as you imagine being in the back of the building, you're walking out onto the hillside, so you're a level higher.
Right, and in the back, you're actually walking out at grade from the first level, and there is no subterranean level
No, there's not.
in there.
Yeah.
And the parking lot that we see over here, this one here, so this is, car's going to come in and drive up the incline and come around in the parking lot. And there's nothing underneath this structure.
That's correct. That's just the parking level.
Single level, and then here, as the person would enter the building, that's a single story.
Yes, and that was that little
That was a drawing, the smaller drawing.
Right.
Okay.
this piece right here.
Got it. Thank you. I think Commissioner Alessi, did you have a question?
No,
He answered. I want to know if we...
So I just have to change the
Hold on a
tape, if you don't
second.
mind. Real quick, thank
We
you.
gotta change the tape. 1 second, Commissioner Parker. Sal?
I have a question back.
Are we on?
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Parker?
On the plan, it appears that there is not vehicular access at the rear of the building. Is that the case? It's all
That's
walkway?
correct. That's correct. It's pedestrian access only
Because of elevation?
because of the elevation. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Suter?
I just want to clarify the elevations. The property south on your diagram is basically the rear of the building, is that correct?
The south, yes,
Yeah,
that's
right.
correct.
In
You
other
read the
words,
compass
looking
right.
up Route 58, which we would think of as north, is really west in your diagram, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
because the Merritt almost goes due north-south at that
So
point.
the grade or slope of the property from west to east, which is towards the Merritt,
Yes,
is a descending grade, is that correct?
that's correct.
And about how steep is that grade?
I'd have to defer that to Walt Jobs, but it gets even steeper after you leave the site and when you go through that bridge, it's very steep.
Right, and
I'd
then
say-
back of the property is a very sharp grade, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I probably should ask Mr. Jokes this, but I'll ask you since you're standing up there, because
Okay.
we were on parking. Part of this application is it's a zone change to a neighborhood design business district. And our neighborhood design business district regulations call for parking in the front, just like our center design. Again, that was designed with our center design in mind. In some of our other neighborhood design business districts like Stratfield, Greenfield Hill, Southport, et cetera. Now, since you aspire to the zone change in this application, could you describe, like, what are the circumstances with regard to lot lines or topography of the site, or that requires you to put parking, like, around the front of the building?
Okay, so as Walt explained and as I briefly explained, the topography lends itself to having parking, not have to get up to the top of that incline to have parking. And the other thing that I think is important to recognize here is that you have the pre-existing site and the pre-existing hotel across the street, which has the parking in front. And I think if you, forgetting the pedestrian access issues and parking, just architecturally to have the building really close to the road on one side and really set back on the other side would be very unbalanced on this stretch of road. Like picture Southport, you have both sides of the street, the buildings are right up on the sidewalk. That makes perfect sense. But if one is already set back with parking in front and the other one is right on the road, I don't think that makes sense. And then you add into the equation the fact that it's a busy road and it's not a pedestrian experience. It's never going to be a pedestrian experience. And I think your regs were designed to encourage and foster pedestrian access to shops and businesses. It's never going to be like that on this stretch of road. It's just not set up that way. I've never walked on the sidewalk on Black Rock Turnpike. I don't think maybe until you get right down into the very busy part of it. You don't very rarely see people walking. You do see bikers, but
You do see runners, though.
You
You'd
see
say
runners
that-
a lot.
I'm one of them.
yeah,
And you know what? It's a hell with cars already.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least with this, you'd be able to run through the parking lot for a few hundred yards.
Mr. Alessi?
It seems like on all your drawings, they end at the building from the Black Rock Turnpike view. And you're not showing the elevation from the parking lot. From the
Actually, from the parking lot? Or
Well, from
the-
Black Rock Turnpike, looking at the parking lot on the right-hand side of the building. I would guess that would be the northern side of the building.
This is the west side.
No, I understand. I'm talking
he's
about the
he's
seven.
referring to over here, I think. If you
Yeah,
look
I'm
at this
referring to
elevation
this,
from
yeah,
Black Rock
parking lot
Turnpike,
level 2.
there's nothing on this side of it showing how much of
On any of
it.
your drawings, it's not showing what that elevation is going to
There's
look
a
like. from the road.
retaining wall there, which does show...
But you're going to have parking up there.
It does show a little bit. You can see some rendering of the retaining wall that's sort of running off the side of the rendering.
But we can't see how high that parking level is from the road. I mean, is that park, those cars going to be 10 feet in the air, 15 feet in the air?
I'd say it's about 8 feet higher. It's about an 8-foot wall there.
Is that the retaining wall right there that where I'm shining the
Yeah,
light?
it's not showing the parking lot, but that parking
Is that the
lot's gonna-
retaining wall you're talking about?
Yes, right here.
How far out does it extend from the building?
How far out?
Well, yeah, how far does that retaining wall go from the building?
I think it's about 80 feet.
It's huge.
So it's 80 feet.
Shows up here on the
It dies,
But is it going to be dock, yeah, is it going to be?
because it goes up.
It's going, if you can think about it, it's going all the way over here until you start ramping up to that upper level.
So it goes from 8 feet to 0,
Correct.
to over 80 feet.
Yeah.
So what are you putting on top of that retaining wall to keep people or cars from driving right off it when they park? 'Cause that's going to be something
Right now, we
visually
don't have any
more-
drawings of that
Is there a drawing
parking
that
lot
shows
at all,
that?
just the overhead.
I mean, I think, sorry, I didn't mean to...
There's a little planting buffer there, which would be a place where snow could be plowed up against. The parking spaces don't go all the way to the wall. There's a little strip of planting there, which may be hard to see, but it's probably about 3 feet deep at the end of the parking slot.
Do we have that elevation in the larger drawings anywhere, do you know? I don't remember seeing that we're talking about. I don't think
That's
we
why I
have.
want to see that. Like I said, I don't see it in the other drawings.
Retaining wall?
I think he's asking for the elevation,
Of the
if
parking
you
lot to the
take
end of the
this
property.
drawing and continue, the views from Black Rock Turnpike to the south stop at the westerly edge of the building. They do not continue the next 80 feet along the parking
I guess
space.
just the drawings again of the property on Black Rock Turnpike.
The question is there an elevation that we have of the entire Black Rock frontage of this building from westerly boundary to easterly boundary? I know we have overviews, I'm not sure if we have these.
You know, I don't think the drawings show that whole retaining wall. That's what you're asking. Yeah. Yeah.
You can, again, retaining wall, if you want to just describe that, Jack, for instance, how it runs and how it fits in entirely.
So the retaining wall runs
Mr. Franco, we need the microphone to record. Please.
the retaining wall runs from the corner of the building and it runs, you know, all the way parallel to the parking field until you get to this loop ramp that comes up. And there is a buffer, a vegetative buffer.
The mic went off. Shut the mic off.
From the end of the...
You got to hold it up or it doesn't.
Yeah, it's working. The vegetative buffer extends from the end of the parking spaces to the retaining wall. And then on the lower part of the retaining wall, there's another landscape buffer that's about 5 or 6 feet wide. It's also planted out. So it's a stone wall, cast stone wall, and, you know, it would be planted on both sides.
Commissioner Leslie?
No, I understand how long the wall is and how they're going to come up and around. What I'm sure the commission's going to want to see is the view from the Black Rock Turnpike, how high this parking lot is going to be from the road until it drops down until low height. I mean, from right now, we're saying, well, it could be 10 feet high, but we don't have an exact drawing of what that's going to look like.
If you look really closely at that drawing, there's a human figure right here in this drawing.
You got to hold the microphone again, Mr.
There's a human figure in the drawing, and Walt just came up and whispered in my ear, that wall is exactly 10 feet high at that point.
You said it again that we didn't pick up again.
The wall at the point of the highest point is 10 feet. And as it tapers, as it goes over to that ramp, it ends up being 3 feet high.
Mr. Franzen, are you filling the property at this point? I'm trying to visualize. We all know what the site looks like. We all drive by it, frequently. Are you filling the site, or are you following the contour that exists right now? I'm trying to visualize why we're suddenly going up in the air 10 feet to get to the parking. Does the site already rise at that same angle, or are you doing a cut and fill of some type on the property?
I'll let Walt explain that, but the site has a constant pitch to it.
Walt, Mr. Jones.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, Walt Jobst again. At the parking lot in front of Building 2, we have a low point where we have our entrance ramp, and we have a upward grade as you go to the west. In this area, you're looking at maybe 2 feet of cut and fill, depending on the existing contours. This then continues in an upward grade around the corner and continues upward till we get to the west face of this building. So a retaining wall at this point, where we're lowest on the front parking lot and highest on the rear, we have an exposure of about 10 feet of retaining wall. As this goes down and this goes up, we're meeting toward an apex, and the exposure on the retaining wall at the west side is about 3 feet. In this area up in here, we have snow fill. It's all cut to lower this grade so we can access the floor of building number 2.
Is there also an elevation difference between Black Rock Turnpike and the northerly edge of the parking lot, specifically in this area here along Black Rock? If one were to walk down Black Rock or bike down or run down, could one just take a turn to the right and go straight across into the parking lot, or is there another retaining wall separating the parking lot elevation?
There's a slope at the entrance, but again, this was designed to pretty much mirror what's there now, within a foot or two.
Is your lot following the slope of Black Rock Turnpike? Is that what you're saying?
This is More or less following the slope of Black Rock Turnpike, yes.
So there's no retaining wall?
There's no
between
retaining
your
wall
property.
along the front. The only retaining wall is off the west face of the building so that we can maintain a separation between the two parking lots. So all along this frontage on Black Rock Turnpike would be a sloped grass grade, no retaining wall.
Thank you.
I'd like to show you some samples now of the materials we're going to use on the building. I'm going to have John Stevens, the project architect, bring them up to you. Both buildings will be brick veneer, and the buildings will have parapets. And the parapets are designed to conceal the mechanicals that will be on the rooftop of the buildings. The lower portion of the buildings will be faced with cast stone, which is the small sample chip that John just handed out. And that is not necessarily the color it'll be, because the color we would try to match it as close as possible to the tone of the Merritt Parkway Bridge that passes over Black Rock Turnpike. And that would be the same color as the mortar for the brick. The windows that we have chosen are clad double-hung windows that have simulated divided lights. They have insulated glass. They're energy-efficient windows. And very high-quality windows.
Mr. Franzen, again, the small piece, that's the trim above the upper floors? Is that what?
That would be the color of the trim on the upper floors, but also the stone portion of the parking level, which is a different material. So you can see the lighter color material. That's what that would be.
Thank you.
We try to emulate the color of the viaduct. I think I already mentioned this, but the exits required will be located in the rear. Additional exits for egress, and they are connected to a ramp that runs continuously from the rear of building number 1 all the way over to that small pedestrian scaled entrance on the west end of the building, building number 2. The lighting in the parking field will consist of 7 single and 1 double gull wing luminaires. They're cutoff type lights that you require. And these are spaced about every 80 to 100 feet apart, depending on the topography. Just talking briefly about visibility of the building. You cannot really see the plant factory, at least right now, with the leaves on the trees. I've made many little trips up and down from different angles. If you head, and especially if you're coming from New York, if you're heading up the Parkway, it's sort of in a blind spot, because as you get off at the exit, there's a big canopy of trees blocking your view of the site. There's a little bit of a shot of it down through the, actually you can see for just a second, you can see down the southbound ramp, and you can see the lights of the Hi-Ho down there. But it's very hard to see. It's also blocked by a large canopy of trees in the southbound ramp island. There's a big island that's bordered by the southbound ramp and the parkway itself, and it has a big clump of trees in it. And then on the state property where I was talking about earlier, where that Quonset hut building is, there's also a little clump of existing hardwood growth there that screens view of the site. And if you're coming from Easton on the Merritt, there's a very, and you can see this on your aerial photos, there's a very narrow throat that you can look through when you get right to the bridge. And it's very hard to see the site from there. I mean, if you're driving, it wouldn't be safe to look at it. If you're a passenger, you see it for a second, and right now you can't see, I don't think you can see the plant factory buildings. Regarding the landscape that we plan to add, there's 3 parts of it. Well, I should mention too, there's going to be a reforested area behind the building. When the plant factory was in full operation, there was a staging area back there. I think there might have been some sort of an area where they had nursery plants and maybe some irrigation, and it's sort of a disturbed area, and that would go back to nature. But in terms of visible landscaping that we would add, we are proposing 3 layers. The first would be a grouping of 10 oak trees, which would be on the state property. We would need permission from DOT to plant those trees, but we would expect that approval would be forthcoming. And as I mentioned before, there's already a large canopy of trees there, so we would put a group of 5 trees on this side of that clump. These are the existing trees here, and another 5 oak trees over here. And then the second layer of landscaping is this band of trees that wraps around the property line. And this is actually the property line here, this curve, and then it straightens out as it goes to the west on Black Rock. So there's a landscape band all the way around the site, curves up around that land, and it kind of bulges out in this little parking tree well over here. And then the third layer is actually up against the building itself, and then the tree spaces for trees, and the landscape buffer that I mentioned along the retaining wall, and then again there's a tree wall for 3 trees here and another 2 up on that upper level.
Mr. Franklin, can you correct me if I'm wrong?
Yes.
The outer band, you talked about those trees. These are all new, these will be all new planted?
These will all be new
What kind
planted.
of trees you can see these are not, currently what's exist on the site, you've acknowledged there's no visual impact.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know, what kind of trees are going to go in here? Because it strikes me probably new trees, unless you, are not going to quite shield this. It'll take a lot of them to kind of grow in, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, you typically,
start with 2 inch
you start with 2 and 3 inch trees, and
It's 20
the
years.
theory being that they get established.
Right.
If you put bigger trees in, they don't always
Do so.
take well.
So it might take
So,
10, 12,
well, I
15 years
think,
till you get to the level of unobtrusiveness for this building that you acknowledge that the
Yeah.
plant factory has, for example, right?
well, we're
Right, I
not
don't know.
taking away anything
I don't
that's
put any words
there.
in your mouth, but
We're not eliminating, none of the trees, that big group of trees I
Right.
mentioned, they're staying there.
They are,
They're
okay.
not even on our property. So we think that the trees we add are only gonna make things better.
Huh?
And,
We hired, for the record, John Fallon, we hired West Scout to do the landscaping plan for that, but if the commission, as part of a condition, felt that specific enhancements in terms of the calibration and whatnot of several of those species, you can impose that, and we certainly will accommodate that if you feel. But you do have a specific landscaping plan, condition, specimens, and whatever. If you feel that in terms of the points that you're making, Commissioner, that I want something that's going to have more visual buffering effect on an immediate basis, that's certainly a condition of approval.
Commissioner Parks,
On the,
microphone.
on the plantings that abut the parkway entrance, has the Conservancy had any input into the
yes,
choice?
we had a meeting, and the 5 trees that we would like to plant on the state property were something that was suggested at that meeting. And then also, we added 3 tree wells on the curved portion of our parking. Maybe John could point those out, the 3 additional tree wells up on that curved portion, right there. Yeah.
We met with the Conservancy, and among the people we met with the Conservancy was, I think she's a member of the board, I'm not positive, but she's active in the Conservancy. It was Sylvia Erskine, who may be known to the commission. I think she was here before you on occasion. She is a registered landscape architect, and we gave her our landscaping plan. She gave her back our input, her input, and we've accommodated that. And when you look at the restrictive covenant, I think there's reference to the landscaping plan and their comments, and so the answer to that is yes. Having said all that, I reiterate the comment I made to Commissioner Kelly, that the commission feels there should be further enhancement to the landscaping plan. We certainly will accommodate your wishes.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
And the specific
Mr.
trees
President,
that,
1 second. Commissioner Wagner had a question.
I don't know if it's out of term, I just don't want to forget. They're in this packet with the Google Earth, there's this image.
yes, and I'm going to talk about
You
that.
can get to it?
Yes.
Thanks.
So, the specific type of trees that West Stout chose, he's asking us to put in sugar maples, river birch, red oak, and American holly. Those are the main species. And then there's some ground cover, and I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it would be some kind of hardy ground cover in the low beds. We talked about the samples. And now I'll get into a couple of things that I anticipate, you may ask, and one of them you just did. Trying to address the architectural standards and how this project reflects their implementation. The standards call for use of traditional New England style detailing. We've designed the buildings to have divided light windows and parapets and applied pediments. They're all sort of neo-Georgian details. And the windows will, together with some relief planes where the brick sort of steps in and out and their suggested pilasters, give some proper scale to the structures. And we think, we know that the parapets will conceal the mechanicals that we will need on the roof. And the front planes of both buildings face the road. Building number 1 also has another facade that that transitionally angles over to the glass connector. And by doing that from any angle as you're getting on the parkway, the building won't have a sawed-off look, so you're looking at the butt end of it. The buildings are brick. Why do we choose brick? Well, most of the non-residential buildings in that part of town are brick. Greenfield Hill Shopping Center is brick. The Chase Bank is brick. The gunnery at the Congregational Church is brick. The Church House Auditorium is brick. The Country Day School is brick. The architecture of the convenience stops on the Merritt Parkway is brick. It's actually clinker brick that has that kind of pieces of coal in it that make it explode and take on strange shapes. And the last page in the handout is a picture that I took of a building that was sort of an inspiration, which is Harry T. Lindbergh was, he was an associate of Stanford White, of McKim, and White. And when he went off on his own, he became a well-known designer of homes, mostly. But he did one home in Westport, which became Greens Farms Academy. And it was built for the Vanderbilt family. Well, the Vanderbilt office headquarters is in Norwalk on Saugatuck Avenue. And it's a delightful complex of these neo-Georgian buildings built probably around the same time as the Merritt Parkway. So that's sort of where we got our inspiration for the architecture. Just a couple observations, since I do live on Congress Street, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I have trouble if I leave my house at 7:30, I can't get out of my driveway. Cops sit in my driveway because it's a good place to do radar. And those people are not going to medical buildings. They're taking a shortcut from the Merritt to someplace else, either the Turnpike. There is a pulse with the train that I notice at night. When the train comes into downtown Fairfield, there's a group of 15 or 20 cars that seem to come in a Congo line all the way up, and they go past my house in the other direction. And the cars are speeding, and I'm looking at this building and I'm thinking, this is a medical building. In all probability, people are going to be coming on the Merritt Parkway, and they're going to get off on the southbound ramp, and they're going to make a right turn and then a left turn into the building. And if they're coming the other way, they're going to have a very short travel. They're not going to be on my street. They're not going to be going past my house at 60 miles an hour. And I look at this as very, very valuable property for the town. When the Merritt Parkway was built in 1934, it's interesting. People in Connecticut fought it tooth and nail. They didn't, when the Hutch ended at the Connecticut line, people in Connecticut didn't want the Merritt. Well, now it's a treasure, and it's a fantastic resource. It's part of our transportation infrastructure. And as the Merritt Parkway developed in Connecticut, there was supposed to be another exit between Westport and Fairfield, which got killed. And that exit was actually going to go all the way to the Sherwood Island connector. So now you have Westport, which is a town of about 25,000 people, with 2 exits, and you have Fairfield, twice as big, with only really 2.5 if you count Park Avenue, which is shared with Bridgeport. So this is our one transportation resource other than the Connecticut Turnpike. And only two corners of this intersection could ever be developed, because the other 2 corners are water. Cricker Brook, and there's a vernal pool or some other water course on the other side. So those other two corners, I don't see anything ever happening there other than the state commuter parking lot that's already there, that's only 50 feet off the Merritt. I think of, my daughter's studying to be a doctor, and I've seen letters circulated that we don't need any more medical buildings. Well, I think she would take umbrage with that because I'm getting older, and I think everybody recognizes there's more need now for healthcare access than ever before. And where are the hospitals? St. Vincent's and Bridgeport Hospital. My doctor, I know, he goes and makes his rounds at the hospital in the morning, and then he goes to the office. So I think this is very valuable real estate and perfect for the use. When you think about who's using it, who's going to be going there, especially the proximity to the hospitals. I can't think of a better place. I don't see it hurting traffic in Greenfield Hill. I mean, I think another letter I saw said maybe it would be good to have like a neighborhood convenience strip mall there. Well, I don't like that idea. I mean, I think what you would get is if you go on Route 25 in Monroe, there's a relatively new strip mall that I think has a Chinese restaurant, a nail salon, and a coffee shop, and it's constantly busy and all day long. And I think the temptation would be with something like that, it would stay open very late because of the proximity to the Merritt Parkway. And I think also that probably the merchants in Greenfield Hill would not appreciate the competition. Those merchants struggle to stay in business. So as a Congress Street resident and an architect, I think the project is a good one. Any change has got to be debated, I understand that. Anyway, with that, I'll turn over the mic and answer any other questions.
On all four sides of the building?
Yes, they will.
Is there going to be an emergency generator system in this building? Power generator?
I'm not absolutely sure of that. I wouldn't be surprised if there was, given, and I'm not sure we maybe.
I don't see the design in the plans. That's why I asked where you would put it.
Maybe Mr. Ricker could answer that for you. No, he knows more about the tenancy.
The parking structure, the parking garage part. How are you going to be ventilating that? Is there going to be a mechanical ventilation system to get air into there?
There probably will be.
That's not your bailiwick
We
either.
haven't developed that.
I'm curious how you designed it, though, and that goes to my next question, the mechanicals on the roof. What's going to be on the roof? What will you see from any adjoining street or neighborhood? What will
I
you
don't
hear?
think you would see, because almost all the points of view of this building are from below it, and the only part that's higher is you're coming down from the reservoir. But that parapet, we'd make sure the parapets wrap around the corner. And typically, they're rooftop units, there's dunnage, and then you have a gas-fired heater or compressor unit on the roof that would be set back from the parapet. So I don't think you'd see any mechanical equipment.
Would any existing residential dwelling either be able to see the roof of this building or hear any of your mechanicals on the roof of the building when they're in operation?
I doubt it. I doubt it. I'm not sure how close the nearest house is, but I think most of the stuff that we would put on the roof would be first off very quiet. My office is in the brick walk, and I've never heard any mechanical equipment. And I'm surrounded by, I've got Fidelity on one side and Morgan Stanley on the other. And the loudest noise was, the traffic on the post road.
If I may address that, I'm confident, you'll have an opportunity to visit the site. I don't think there's any residence, be it a single-family residence or any of the homes up at Greenfield Hunt that are at all proximate to the building itself, so that the issue that the chairman raises, which is important, I don't think is any issue at all. Would be an issue at all.
Commissioner Jacobs?
The actual roof, what color will it be?
Well, we recommend white roofs now because they reflect heat.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they last longer.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Mr. Fallon, before I forget, we're not going to obviously finish this tonight. I wouldn't think, maybe we will. Do you have any objection between the time this hearing is concluded and the commission votes for the commissioners to walk this site, the Plant Factory site?
Oh, absolutely not. I would expect you to remember. And the site is accessible, so
you don't need to make
First, I
arrangements.
want to confirm we can go anytime and
Yeah,
walk around.
I think the representatives are all here, and that's your convenience.
Thank you.
Obviously, one of the other things that are obviously important here, both in terms of functionality and also getting, ultimately, hopefully, your approval, is to ensure that we came up with a use that in its nature and its magnitude was one that we could present to you with evidence to justify an absolute finding that we were not going to cause any off-site traffic issues. And we found, in looking at a lot of different options, because I say we've been working on this project for the last year and a half, that's true, but we've probably been looking at this site and having various people come to us with various proposals for about 5 years, and we found that the medical office use presented the best and most win-win situation in terms of an enhancement to the property, a good tax base provider, a good service provider to the community, and one that, because of the nature of that or those operations, could be well accommodated on the site without creating undue traffic problems that other uses might. And so we asked Mr. Galante, who's been working with us for the better part of 2 or 3 years, to evaluate all this. And I'd like to call on him now, because ultimately we came to this as the best proposal on a lot of levels. One of them was certainly the traffic considerations. And he submitted his report to you, and I'd like him briefly to overview it, summarize it, and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mike Galante, Principal of Frederick Clark Associates, and just for the record, we are located in Fairfield as far as having an office here. And I'm a resident of Fairfield, but I don't live near John or Jack, just for the record. Before I get into the traffic study and the findings of that study, I might as well continue with the site plan. It's a good point to start and actually continue what's been discussed so far. In locating the access drive on Black Rock Turnpike, it's placed at a point really at the crest of the hill to maximize sight distance, create the greatest separation from the Congress Street and the on-ramp for the Merritt Parkway southbound here, and to actually stay away from the curve of the road on Black Rock Turnpike. So that location was placed, that drive was placed at a point to maximize sight distance, and that's based on speed, which is actually 40 miles per hour, which is actually the posted speed limit. The cars are actually driving at the posted speed limit at this location, which relates to the distance we need, which is 445 feet based on state standards, and we have well over 445 feet in each direction. We actually look around that curve to the west, actually, not to the north, and actually look under the beginning of the Merritt Parkway, just for reference purposes. And I'll leave this up in case we have questions later on. Developing a traffic study really for any development is an important part of it, not because I did it, but it's an important part of any development and proposal before the town. And the purpose of the traffic study, as you know, is for me to describe to you the roadway conditions, the traffic volumes under today's conditions, future traffic volumes on the roadways surrounding the site traffic generation based on a particular lane use, the assignment of that traffic, and of course, eventually, what is the impact of that traffic? Every development generates traffic, usually. Not every development, most developments have new traffic. And the impact of that development and that traffic on the roads through an analysis that's really followed by the town and certainly by the state of Connecticut. Based on the findings of that analysis, do we need mitigation to accommodate that traffic? And that's based on certain standards that we follow. If we have, and we use this word, and I know we use it, significant impacts, we have to mitigate that impact. And that's through different types of road improvements, changing of traffic signal timing and phasing, turning lanes, and so on. And I'll touch on that as I go through the process. All the graphics I'm showing you tonight are in my report, which is dated June 2011 of this year. This is simply just figure 2, which just shows the location of the site itself. And for reference, since been mentioned tonight, Black Rock Turnpike is actually east-west at this location. And the parkway actually is north-south, believe it or not. So just for references, this is the Parkway. This is Black Rock Turnpike. Here's the site. Court Street is the Hi-Ho Motel and restaurant and so on. We conducted traffic volume counts at this location for the last couple of years, actually. And the most recent data that's used in this report is really from February of this year. Thanks, Walt. Even got the right one. And this reference, again, is figure 3, which simply shows the traffic volumes in the area. And we focused on the interchange of interchange 44 on the Parkway, which is the intersection of two state highways, Black Rock Turnpike being State Route 58, and the Merritt Parkway, which is Route 15. And we all know these intersections quite well. It's really 4 intersections serving the Parkway, Congress Street, and Black Rock Turnpike. The design of this intersection and intersection some years ago is a high design intersection for the interchange itself, provided by Condot. It carries a high volume of traffic. There's no doubt about that. And from my perspective as a traffic engineer, it works quite well. That doesn't mean there are not delays during certain time periods or in certain lanes and certain approaches. Volumes, references, in front of the site itself on Black Rock Turnpike in the morning, which is the peak, 7:45 to 8:45, 1,000 vehicles. In the afternoon, same location, about 800 vehicles. If you look at Black Rock Turnpike to the east of the Parkway, going towards the commercial area, two-way volume on Black Rock Turnpike at that point, both AM and PM, is about 1,800 vehicles. So it's a very clear difference in traffic volume on Black Rock Turnpike, certainly because of the Merritt Parkway, the interchange, and so on. Congress Street, depending on where you look at it, whether it's on the south or north of the ramps, anywhere from 400 vehicles to 1,500 vehicles, AM and PM. A variety of traffic volumes based on the ramps itself. The back of this is just simply figure 4, which shows the afternoon volumes, and we have that condition. Next step, and every time we do this, we do not only manual turn movement counts, and we match that to state data. In this case, the state highway, we have volumes, but we actually put the hose across the road and measure traffic volumes. In this case, on Black Rock Turnpike, data site frontage. And just for reference purposes, this is an all-day count, if you will, on an hourly basis, and you clearly see 2 peaks. This is the morning commuter peak. This is the afternoon commuter peak. We analyze these peaks. We look at the highest volumes as far as the background condition, and we add our site traffic on top of that. The afternoon is actually 4:45 to 5:45 as far as the peak hour. This is figure 12 from the report itself. This is just simply the state data, again for patterns. It's essentially the same type of pattern. And the state data is actually from 2010, so it's fairly recent. Another important part of this, and it's important to talk about it, is everyone knows this intersection, interchange, and the intersections there, volume of traffic, busy during certain peaks. This is just the volume of traffic on the southbound on-ramp, which is near the site itself. This is the morning peak. The rest of the day, very low volume. So we need to keep this in mind when we look at traffic volume on Black Rock Turnpike, Congress Street, both sides, and the Merritt Parkway ramps itself. There is volume there. It's clear the commuter traffic, depending on the ramp you're using and direction. This is the northbound off-ramp of the Parkway in the afternoon. Everyone's coming home from work, Stanford, wherever it might be. This is the morning as far as who's getting on going northbound.
Mr. Canali?
Yes, sir.
So this is typical, though. This is an average day. This isn't the 30, 40, 50 times on that Merritt, which I've driven for 7 years to New York, where a car has gotten into an accident and now everything's backed up, and what would be the worst peak would be stretched out. This just happens to be an average day. This isn't a day where there's an accident, which is where there's a stoppage in traffic flow, which backs everything out through that time.
When we do our machine counts, we have it out there for at least a week.
Right.
We do every day.
Right.
The state puts it out for usually a day or 2.
Right.
But they compare it to previous information, previous data, and they come up with I'll call it a seasonally adjusted volume, which is the base condition that we have to use. We reference it. Now, accidents on the Merritt Parkway, this time of year, deer hits, for example. In the morning, the Merritt's backed up southbound, certainly. In the afternoon, it's backed up northbound, if you will, towards Bridgeport, Trumbull, and so on. That's almost an everyday occurrence.
It is.
In many respects.
Dot, if you actually put a like a magnifying glass over it, you'd see me there screaming and pulling my hair out. I'd be, because I'm on there. So,
I have no comment on here.
I'm trying to tell myself it's insignificant, but it never seems to be.
No, it's...
But to cut to the chase here, you're talking about an area where already you get between, depending on what time of the day, between 800 and 1,400 cars going through.
Those are the peak volumes.
Peak volumes.
1 hour
I know,
volumes,
but peak
right.
volumes, which are concentrated in those hours, but could stretch over, because I've been on that after 9:30. And then you're looking to add trip ends of around 81 to 112, it sounds like.
Yes.
So an increase of about 100 for about what, between these two is about 1,000. So about a 10% increase, it would seem, in trip ends. Is that about right?
Where do you get 1,000 from?
Well, you're saying between 800 and 1,400.
Oh, on the road today?
Today.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, so,
yes.
Okay, just trying to understand where
Yeah.
we're at. Okay.
And keep in mind, years ago, traffic engineers used to talk about percent increase in volume. 2%, 3%, 10%. If it was 10%, it was a terrible thing. But the correct way of analyzing traffic and the impact of this development or any development on roads is not the percent increase in volume. If you have one car on the road today, you have one car, it's a significant increase, just as a very simple comparison. Yes, this road has anywhere from 400 to 1,500 vehicles on Congress Street, depending which one you're looking at, what section. Black Rock Turnpike is roughly 800 to 1,000 vehicles in front of the site, 1,800 to the east of the parkway itself. We're adding a small number. The real measure of that, and I'll get to it, is really the impact of that traffic, the 82 and the 112 in the afternoon for site traffic, on these 4 intersections, plus our driveway, and what is the change in delay. That's really the measure that we use, and that's what the state uses, and that's what the federal standards are. And based on that change in delay, we decide what the impact is and if there's a need for mitigation. This is a very complicated interchange, 4 intersections, 4 traffic signals that all operate together. They all work together, and they work quite well, actually. Only recently there was a mishap with the phasing and timing on 2 of the traffic signals, but I can tell you all the years I've been going through here, and I'm sure you've gone through, it works quite well. It moves traffic. That's my job, to move traffic, and that's what we do for a living. And I don't mean to downsize the concern of traffic and impacts and so on. The next step is to estimate the amount of traffic, and
Commissioner Alessi, have questions?
Yes.
My question would be, do you have any way to project the traffic generated by the newly approved Black Rock Congregational Church, and also the,
I have a good guess.
You've got a good guess, okay, and the Hoytons Hill?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I just happen to be the traffic engineer for both. So I do know the numbers.
Yeah, I do know you know the numbers.
And I'll get to that in a moment, because we haven't incorporated that into the analysis. Okay.
And Commissioner Alessi has a question as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Galante, and Mr. Canelli can attest to this. I go that way to work every morning, heading on 58 North. And you're saying it's working well, but in the mornings, Congress Street heading towards Black Rock Turnpike, southbound is backed up. The Merritt Parkway exit ramp, southbound, is backed up to the Merritt Parkway. And the cars heading north on 58, north on 58.
North to west, yes.
Yeah, they're backed up to the 2 lights, and there's also cars blocking the entrance ramp to Merritt Parkway, all the way across Black Rock Turnpike sometimes.
You're talking about the person on block, the last one, traveling southbound?
No, I'm saying heading northbound
That's
on
what I thought
58 in
you
the
said.
morning.
Yeah, okay.
If you're trying to make a left onto the Merritt Parkway south, correct.
Okay.
That's backed up sometimes across Black Rock Turnpike.
Okay.
And Congress Street, coming down, right, that's all the way backed up because a lot of people are using it as a cutoff.
Yes.
To go around the traffic on the Merritt Parkway.
Correct.
And the exit ramp on the Merritt Parkway southbound is backed up too, which is also causing traffic, correct?
Correct.
So now we want to add another 81 cars in the morning to this. And
Correct.
it's not going to cause a major factor?
No. And I don't take that lightly, man. I appreciate your comment.
Well, I mean,
no, that's
I mean, you're saying it's handling it well now, but it's really backed up there.
Commissioner Barrett, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, did you want to respond?
I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. And I saw another
No,
name.
respond to Commissioner
Respond
Alessi
first,
first if
yeah.
you want, and then we'll go to Commissioner
Okay,
Barrett.
okay.
I'm sorry.
The measure of, the purpose of the traffic study is to identify current conditions, site traffic, future traffic conditions, and the difference between a no-build and a build condition identifies the impact of this project on the road system. And I'll get to that chart eventually. The reason why I say that, because in the eyes of the state, and I think the town in many cases, is what is the impact of this development? We can't fix the Merritt Parkway, although I have some recommendations for it. I don't think anyone would like, adding lanes to the Parkway, but that is a solution. And I'm just pointing that out. If there were extra lanes on the Parkway, you would take traffic off the local streets. That's a reason. The delays that you're talking about, for example, the Congress Street southbound here in the morning, behind the gas station, if you will, our analysis shows that there's what we call a queue length that goes around this curve. We show that. And if you look at the numbers in the chart that I'll get to in a little while, some of the bold numbers give you an indication of some of those delays. That's part of the analysis. The results of our analysis does two things. Do we change level of service? Do we increase the delay, the average vehicle delay per vehicle, per approach, or per movement? And do we increase that queue length by a significant number? And we base it on feet. If you look at that chart that I will get to in a little while, you'll see that this traffic, this 82 trips in the morning and 112 in the afternoon, I use the word, has an insignificant impact on these conditions in future traffic conditions.
In terms of time, when you say insignificant impact, you're saying in terms of the time wait at an intersection. So if a couple of seconds is added, but that for each car, that's insignificant. If I wait 5 more seconds, 3 more seconds, 2 more seconds, that's the insignificance you're describing.
Correct.
Just as right.
If I can interrupt, I mean, it's pretty, it's detailed.
Yeah,
Page 21.
Right.
So, number 1 Congress Street, it's your opinion that the level of service is going to go, there's going to be a delay of an additional 0.8 seconds per vehicle. And that takes it from a B to C. But, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but all of the other ones stay the same. Well, Black Rock Turnpike goes from B to C also.
There's 5.
Yeah.
But the other ones stay the same in your analysis.
If you look at table 6,
Yeah.
that's the chart that follows that description.
Yeah.
That's the table format of the results of the analysis of the computer model of all these intersections.
Yeah. I know, that was really my question, was you're going to cover table 6 in detail.
I was.
Right, because,
I'm not doing now.
and while you're doing it, could you discuss the project impacts, both the 5 intersection directions where there's a deterioration of level of service, plus all the delays where it doesn't change the level of service, yet there's an increased delay, which is the columns over to the far right. So my question was just if you could just go through this chart in detail at some point in time. I think that would be helpful for us to understand. Yeah, you can do it in your own sequence. I mean, they started talking about delays and things, and I said, I'm hoping you're going to go through that.
Hang on a minute. As I mentioned, and you mentioned, this development will generate 82 trips in the morning peak hour and 112 trips in the afternoon peak. We add that traffic to the peak volumes of the road system. In this case, 7:45 to 8:45 in the morning, 4:45 to 5:45 in the afternoon. Those are the peak volumes that we actually counted at the intersections, and that was identified as the peak hour for the entire interchange. You look puzzled.
Just 5:45 in the evening during rush hours?
Yes. That doesn't mean there's no traffic after 6 p.m.
Right.
This is the highest volumes counted.
Because from about 3:20 until almost 8 o'clock, the no exit zone is unusable going northbound.
Yeah, but the volume at 8 o'clock
and in
at
the
night.
morning, if I could explain, just trying to clarify,
Okay.
in the morning, from 6:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock in the morning or later sometimes.
Correct.
The northbound lane, the southbound lane, the southbound entrance point is horrible, horrible. I mean, and that's, I'm saying, so I understand what you're saying. The absolute time when you've counted is when the numbers are highest, is at that point. Okay.
It goes back to this graphic, which is figure 12. It gives you clear peaks, and that's why I mentioned before. That doesn't mean there's no traffic before 7 a.m. in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning. The peak volume There's a peak, and we count it in 15-minute segments for every hour. And this is a machine count for 24 hours. And that's how we generate this graphic. But it just shows you the actual peak, and we analyze that peak condition. That doesn't mean that, you know, a half hour before my peak, that the identified peak hour is not a high volume. It may not be as much as what we said in the next 15 minutes. That's all I'm saying.
Here's what I'm trying to, and we'll get to table 6, and I know there's questions, but here's what I'm saying is from a broad perspective with you is this. You know, I'm often in front of Mr. Franzen's home, and it's not 7:30 in the morning, Mr. Franzen. I could wave to you about 10 o'clock, and there I am. There's construction, there are accidents, somebody's cutting down, someone's mowing the lawn, just a little ways close to Westport. And I thought to myself, at least as I'm hearing this analysis, I would hate to be driving my mom or someone to get a medical treatment and try to access that area when, well, it's not the peak volume up here, but it's still here, and the roadways are blocked. Or, as often is the case, that area is very difficult to traverse, you know, well into the morning when the facility's going. That's what I'm concerned about. I understand what you're saying.
Don't forget, someone may have the doctor's appointment at noon, which is here.
Right.
Okay? We're analyzing the time period when you and I are most likely going to work, although I leave pretty early in the morning.
Right.
And we have patients coming in, so it's a combination of staff and patients coming in 8 o'clock in the morning or at 5 o'clock at night. During the day, there might be a patient going in and out, depending on the doctor's schedule. But look at the pattern of traffic on these intersections, if you will. It's a lot lower. We're looking at the worst case, the highest volumes. The volume that you see at 7 o'clock in the morning does not continue throughout the day.
No.
It doesn't.
At some point. But I'm just saying,
It's
but
never
where
going to be
your
that
peak
close.
is where your peak is, as you're describing. I'm just saying, the reason I'm trying to make this, understand this clearly is that the peak hours tend to be outside where the doctor's hours are, but the decline from those peaks is still significant traffic volume.
Yes, but we're analyzing the peak. But I'm analyzing the peak. I'm assuming that doctors coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning to see you as a patient, which I'm not sure any doctors come in at 7 in the morning, but someone might be there. Okay.
I'm sorry, I would
That's
stay
okay.
because I know you wanted to describe what was going on with Table 6, because the Vice Chairman Barrett's made a good point about trying to understand where you're coming from. So if you want to talk about that, I apologize.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second.
Oh, okay.
Let me just go through the next two charts, if I may. We mentioned the traffic being generated by the site, medical building at 35,000 square feet. It's going to generate anywhere from 82 trips in the morning peak to 112 in the afternoon peak hour. The next step is to add that traffic to the roadway system, and we distribute that traffic to the area roads and intersections and so on. And I'm looking at the wrong graphic, and it was said before, about 40% of this traffic, this site traffic, will be going to and from the parkway in the peak hour. Don't forget, we have staff that's coming in. Now, all staff's going to live in Fairfield. They're going to live someplace else. They're coming to this site. This site is perfectly located as far as being right near an interchange on a parkway to serve. So, and it was mentioned, I believe, by Jack O'Wally, but a lot of this traffic goes right from the parkway to the 2-hour driveway. And it really have no impact, or little impact, on the surrounding roadways, such as Congress Street or whatever it might be. But we do put traffic on Congress Street, both sides, and Black Rock to the west towards Reading and Easton and so on, and certainly Black Rock towards the turnpike. 40% of our traffic is coming from that direction. So we distribute that traffic on the roadway system, all of these intersections, and then we add that site traffic, AM and PM, to the no-build condition, which I forgot to talk about, which includes the softball field I think you were referring to before. That's in the background condition for a 2012 condition. Black Rock Church, that's a Sunday morning condition that's going to change. As far as the 950 seats that will be at the church, that's a Sunday morning activity, and we've analyzed that in this interchange, in these intersections, for that project on a Sunday morning. Their weekday morning, 9 a.m. in the morning, with their nursery school and so on, is essentially the same. So that traffic is already in the traffic counts we've conducted. Okay, the girls' softball field is an afternoon after-school activity, which is seasonal, but we've added that into the afternoon time period. Okay, so it's in there, plus a growth rate as far as other development that may occur in the area that may impact these roads and these intersections. Okay? Now, Table 6.
If we go back to your assumption, your 40% assumption. Now, I know where most of my colleagues live, and I don't know that any of us would get on the Merritt Parkway to go to visit our doctor there. We'd either cut over Congress or Black Rock or many, I don't know if any of you, the Merritt doesn't have a lot of exits like 95. A lot of us jump on 95.
That's correct.
If we're going from 21 to get to the meeting here, for instance, we'll get on the highway for an exit or two. How do you come up with the 40%? Is that some standard that you're using, or how do you determine that 40% of the people are going to take the...
No, as I mentioned, it's staff and patients. I'm looking at the morning peak, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Staff is coming, nurses, doctors, whatever, whoever's, technicians.
Yeah, but the point is that you don't know.
No, every day's different.
Who's going to be hired. You don't know where they're
That's
going
right.
to come from.
That's right.
You don't know what specialties these doctors and medical offices are going to be, whether they're just going to be general, practitioners, or if they're going to be highly specialized and draw patients from a wide geography. And so I think pointedly the question is, where do you get the 40% assumption? Is there a basis for that assumption? And if not, then just tell us that.
The assumption is my guess, my educated guess on traffic patterns, traffic volumes at this interchange on the Parkway, on the ramps, on Congress Street, Black Rock Turnpike. Traffic to the west on Black Rock Turnpike, the population is much lower towards Reading and East and so on than it is to the east on Black Rock Turnpike. I have 5% coming down Black Rock Turnpike, if you will. I have 40% coming up Black Rock Turnpike.
Right, in terms of the traffic volumes.
Site traffic.
You're right.
That's my site traffic.
And so, could you answer the question?
Yeah.
It's your best guess.
It's the best guess.
As to
That's right.
where the traffic is going to come from and where it's going to go to in and out of the facility.
That's right.
It's a guess.
It's a guess. And I can tell you, we've gone back on some projects after they're built, and we try to see if our estimates, our projections are appropriate. I'm not saying we're 100% right, but we're usually very close.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
You're usually very close based upon, historical data and the resources that you utilize in order to plug in your assumptions and run your computer models.
Yes.
And I respect Commissioner Leclerc for calling this out, because I thought about it and I didn't ask it, but you threw in an assumption there that we hadn't really heard before. You said 40% of the employees and the patients who were going to be coming in and out of here were going to be jumping on, coming off on and off the Merritt. It struck me, it struck him. He asked what the basis of your assumption is, and you've told us, and that's all it is.
Yeah, and the 40%, and that, we thought the same thing. We're all patients to some doctor in town, usually, and we're on the Post Road or Round Hill Road in my case. But the staff, my daughter works at a medical facility in Wallingford and in Danbury. She works in two different places. So she's on the Parkway or on Black Rock Turnpike, depending on the day of the week. So she's driving someplace. In her case, as an example, she's using the Parkway to get to Wallingford and back from Wallingford. Or Danbury via Black Rock Turnpike, Route 58, which is a nice scenic ride every day. But my point is, she doesn't live near where she works. Just like I don't, have an office in New York, which is not nearby. I have an office in Fairfield, which I'd like to be at more often. So it's, we take that into account.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the question, because it's all part of what we do. And if I may go back to...
Not quite yet,
Sorry.
Commissioner Barrett.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Galante, would you agree, or the residents of Fairfield that might use this facility, again, what Commissioner Leclerc said, just knowing this town and where we all live, I don't think any of our residents that were using the facility would get on the Merritt Parkway at all. Because, like you said before, we don't have the exits. Our exits are, Park Avenue, which is really Bridgeport, and going 46 to 44. The only commissioners that possibly would do it are Commissioner Kennelly and myself, and we wouldn't. We would take other roads to get there. We would never go up to the Parkway and go over one exit.
I'm not sure everyone lives, but I would...
Well, I'm just saying, just take any resident of the town of Fairfield, who exactly would be using the Merritt Parkway of our 58,000 residents to get to here? Where would they live to do that?
Only residents to the east of here, or in this case, north of here on the Parkway.
But
Park Avenue, Stratfield Road, that's the only choice.
Right, and I would suggest they would probably take Congress Street or some other...
That's
cut
very
through.
possible, that's correct.
So,
but as I mentioned, we're including staff.
Yeah, I realize the building is meant to service other communities. I'm just
Yes.
saying, out of the 58,000 people that live here, I don't see any of them using the Merritt Parkway and being in that 40%.
Now, keep in mind, if I may, we analyzed the morning commuter peak, the afternoon commuter peak. If I was analyzing 10 o'clock in the morning, my distribution of site traffic may be completely different. It may be all local roads, for example. Okay? But those residents are going to some doctor someplace
That's true.
today.
Commissioner Weber.
Thank you. So, just to put this in context, how many employees is the facility designed to accommodate?
I'm not sure if there's a number picked, but going back from a traffic analysis purpose, keep in mind in medical buildings, you may have 20 doctors. Not every doctor is in every day in his office space. So not every office space may be occupied every day with patients.
Right. You're drawing
So-
upon data for a specific purpose, and that it includes the type of use in the professionals and the professionals' historical use of
Yes.
facilities and things like that. And I guess what I'm maybe asking about a slightly different number, which is just generally, how many employees is it expected, is this facility expected to hold?
The answer to that is we don't know, only insofar as we're analyzing the traffic based upon the standards that apply in the manual for the use.
He may not be the right person to answer the question. Maybe you or one of the other.
It's in the office building, it's, you know, the 35,000 square feet, 2 medical office buildings. How many actual employees will be there? We could only be guessing because we don't know at this point, but we do know we're complying with the parking requirements that we established for medical use. We do know that we asked Mr. Galante to examine for purposes of his traffic analysis, utilizing the standards of the manual, what the uses. So the answer is we can't tell you, the exact number of employees.
Okay, well, I mean, part of the reason why I'm asking, it might be a little bit out of place or out of context, is that some of the comments that we got, which you've mentioned in your remarks by email and the like, one of the points in favor of the project was that this facility would be a resource for jobs for Fairfield, right? Right. You saw that, right? So this just inspired, just triggered the question that I had, because we're talking about, employees and patients and a resource for Fairfield residents, and I figured now is a good time as any to sort of, ask that data point.
I'd like the letter writers, or hopefully someone here will speak to that, because that's not a main thrust of our position. We certainly agree, as I'll summarize, the use that we propose here has significant economic benefit for the town, both in terms of tax base and also likely some additional employment, and most importantly, providing medical services conveniently for a lot of residents who are Fairfield residents. But to tell you that our primary focus or request to you is to consider this for approval as a job generator. With respect to the people who answered, that's not really our primary focus.
Okay.
It's a service generator.
It may not be a primary focus, but in terms of a data point, I thought if you had the information, it'd be helpful. But if we don't, we don't.
We don't.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, one last comment on how we came up with traffic generation. We based it on square footage of the building.
Sure.
The best way in this case to do that, because
and you apply the standards from the state resources and the computer models to tell you that based upon the use of the building, the square footage of the building, and et cetera, that it's going to generate X number of trips per hour during certain peak times and so forth.
And the standard I'm using is the standard that we're required to use by Connecticut DOT. Just for reference. Table 6. This table in the report is, to me it's simple. It's a simple summary of the analysis of all the intersections in a no-build and a build condition. And as I said at the beginning, the comparison of a no-build and a build is really the best way to measure the impact of this development, this site traffic on the roadway system and the intersections we included. And we listed by intersection, AM and PM, before and after you build the project itself and add that traffic to the roadway system. And the last set of columns on the right side, which is called project impacts, is really the summary of the modeling of the intersections by lane group or turning movement at each intersection. And what it essentially says is that we maintain very acceptable levels of service. We change almost none of them. We have a couple that go from A to B or B to C, which is very acceptable as far as increase in delay. And we have very insignificant or very low numbers of increase in delay. And that's why I use the word insignificant. We've had that discussion before, but that's a traffic engineering terminology that we're required to use by CONDOT. And I use that word to describe impact of this development. And what this result of this in this table tells me is that this added traffic does not require any modifications to the traffic signals or adding of lanes, for example, at the 4 intersections serving the interchange of Black Rock, Congress Street, both sides, and the Parkway. What we do come out of this analysis in this report, and the police department and the DOT agree with us, we've met with both, is that we need a bypass lane on Black Rock Turnpike at our site frontage. Meaning, if I am waiting to make a left turn into this driveway in the morning, I have a place to sit while the car that's driving to Reading or whatever can pass me on the right side, on the high host side of the street itself. That widening will take place within the state right-of-way. And the pavement will be widened to accommodate this bypass lane. The difference between a bypass lane and a left turn lane is the bypass lane doesn't have striping and arrows to say it's a dedicated left turn lane.
Is this the lane that then gets rid of the northbound lane in the south? There's like a north-facing lane on the southbound? Maybe I'm wrong.
Southbound, which is really eastbound.
It's eastbound, right, exactly.
Doesn't change at all.
Right, but doesn't...
It's one lane going into 2 lanes
Right.
by the traffic signal going down the hill itself.
And the right-hand lane is a turn only, right?
No, the right, coming down the hill is a right and a through. You can go underneath the Parkway.
Yeah.
Or make a right turn southbound on the Parkway.
Right.
The left lane could be a left turn onto Congress Street, north as I call it, or straight through under the Parkway overpass. That's right here. The bypass lane will be constructed here. In this case, westbound or northbound on Black Rock Turnpike.
But it would be just like a center lane without, a turn arrow or that kind of
There are no turn arrows, no white arrows saying left turn only, for example. The pavement flares out, it's 21 feet, so it functions as 2 lanes, but it doesn't have the striping. The reason why it's a bypass lane and not a left turn lane is the volume of traffic turning in the driveway is not high enough to dictate a dedicated left turn lane.
So it's widening the road enough so that if someone's waiting there, they can go around.
Exactly. That's exactly what it does. And as I mentioned,
Wait. Look, Commissioner Barrett's first, but let Mr. Galante finish his thought.
all I was going to say, just to finish that thought, before I forget it, is that goes in hand where we place the driveway serving the site itself, which is opposite this driveway at the high hill, which is really the second driveway coming up the hill. And if you can tell, we've separated it by a great distance from the traffic signal and the curve that's actually off the sheet here, as far as the alignment to maintain and provide appropriate site distance for 40 miles per hour. That's what the state looks at: site distance, speed, volume, placement of a driveway. That driveway will be 1 lane in, 1 lane out, controlled with a stop sign, a stop bar, and a double yellow center line on the driveway itself. And the last part, before I forget this part of it, is, as was mentioned before, that house that's here, which is covered with vegetation now, the little red house, because of that house, this on-ramp is 2-way for the Parkway southbound.
We get rid of that.
And everyone really, I've never seen a car come out up there, fortunately. But we will be removing that. That will be really and truly just a 1-lane on-ramp southbound for the Parkway in the future. And the state's thrilled that we're going to be doing that, because they had to provide access to that little red house that no one's used as long as I've been in town, which is a while.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Galante, now that you have table 6 up to demonstrate.
Thought I was finished with that table.
just wanna be- No. I'd like to ask you about some specific
Okay.
data on that
Sure.
table. Overall, in the project impacts, we see that 5 different, I don't know what we call this, intersections, plus the turning or...
The driveway.
Plus the driveway,
Yes.
are deteriorate. 5 of them deteriorate in terms of level of service.
Yes.
Either from B to C or A to B.
Yes.
But I also point out that the project delay increases on others. The 2 I'd like you to address too is in the 3rd block, the State Route 58 at Congress Street North.
Yes.
The first 2 there, it goes from level of service D to level service D, so it doesn't degrade, but the delay increases by 5.8 seconds.
Yes.
The next one increases from 36.5 to 47.6, staying at D, but that to me is a significant delay. I mean, it's really going from bad to really bad, but there's no different letter to really gauge that. So when we say no deterioration, to me, going from 36 seconds to 47 seconds at that particular intersection is a pretty, it's significant. It may not earn a letter there, but I mean, that's 11, I think any of us would say 36 to 47 is a pretty significant change in delay.
Now, just to kind of answer it maybe a couple different ways, and is that there is information here on levels of service and the range of delay. For example, level of service A is from 0 to 10 seconds. If I'm at 2 second delay today and I add 8 seconds to that, or 7.9 seconds, I'm still level of service A. So I keep the same level of service. So it depends where I'm starting out within that level of service. There's a range for levels of service from A through F, usually 10, 15 seconds, just to give you a range.
So what would it have to get up to? And just using this as an example, you said that this goes from 36 to 47 seconds. What would it have to get up to get that next?
Could be another 5 seconds.
Yeah,
of
so
delay.
about 50 for
Just
F, right?
Roughly.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, the other part, if I may, the other part of the answer is we have an increase in delay, which we clearly show what it is by lane group and movement and so on. A level of service that changes from B to C is not considered significant in the eyes of DOT or the Federal Highway Administration. Anything from A to D, if it stays within those levels of service, is considered acceptable, meaning it operates fine. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have a delay at that traffic signal and you're not waiting there. But it's not a perfect world. Not every intersection is level of service A, which is no traffic, no delay.
Mr.
So there's a range.
Coming up with table 6, did you factor in the bypass lane or not?
Yes.
Is that who is doing that lane? Is the developer doing that, or is that something?
Oh,
the
we would
state's
be doing that, absolutely. We're obligated to do that. As part of an encroachment permit with DOT for the driveway, we would be building the bypass lane.
And
Yes.
Mr. Galante, can I just respond, so I'm clear? Table 6, and these are all, again, levels of service analysis.
Yeah, we can't, Mr. Powell, we can't even hear you here now because the sound system's not working again.
These are all level of service analysis as in table 6, again, at those peak hours,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
So these would not be, for example, the delay that Commissioner Barrett refers to, that's a peak hour delay. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a delay that
All day.
extends into the day.
Right. Yes, and also, when CONDOT looks at a signalized intersection, there's also an overall answer, overall level of service. That's what the DOT looks at. They don't look at specific lane groups. They want to see it, we certainly provide it, but they look at the overall, and if it's overall from A to B, B to C, or C to D, that's acceptable in one. There is no mitigation needed or required. If I was to go from D to E overall, then I would have to mitigate that. So as far as mitigation, these traffic signals are on a computer system that operates all 4 together. It's based on volume of traffic traveling through the intersection. So the timing of the traffic signals changes based on the volume. So I don't need to make a recommendation to change the timing when it does it automatically.
But to be clear, this is when these peak volumes are. This is optimal. This is when things are flowing normally. You said that the state does a 1 day, you do 5 days, I think, like that.
We do at least 5 days. Yes.
At least 5 days.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, most folks who commute on a daily basis don't experience traffic on 1 or 2 days. They experience them over the course of, say, 180 days.
Correct.
So I think, that's something
Every
else
day
to
changes
consider.
a little bit.
In other words, within those numbers are those many days where what is already an uncomfortable, if acceptable, level of service
It may
be further worsened.
Yeah, it may be uncomfortable for the average driver.
Right.
But from a traffic engineering perspective and the guidelines that we follow,
Right.
It could be acceptable.
Right.
Okay? I mean, we need to keep that in perspective.
Absolutely.
I understand what everyone's thinking here, but
Mr.
I look at things a little differently.
I have enormous respect for your professional credentials, and I respect you as a neighbor as well. I just want you to know that when we kid around.
No,
when
no,
we're talking.
absolutely
But-
not.
But my point is just that for the folks here, there is this distinction. You're looking at it as a kind of a series of kind of, data points.
It's
Yeah,
modeling.
especially
Right. It's modeling.
It's
and
modeling.
how the
As opposed
traffic
to
signals
our real world
operate.
experience sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all.
And,
Okay.
and, I mean, fair enough, people should recognize that
Yeah.
there is an industry standard and there are
Yes.
state standards, and you're using certain legal terminology
Yes.
which is appropriate in the study.
That's correct.
And
Thank you.
we're addressing
Yeah.
practical considerations.
Yes.
And if I may, John, I think the other thing we all have to understand, as you wear your planning hats, and as members of the public weigh this, is listen, we don't live in a perfect world. You got an 18-acre piece of property on Route 58, across the street from a bar, restaurant, and motel, serviced by a public bus transportation stop, serviced by sewers, and something's going to happen to that property. In the ideal world, it'd be nice if it just stayed the way it was. But this application, this process is about us as a community, you as a commission, we as residents, maintaining control in an imperfect world. And my belief strongly here is this application, without getting into my summary, represents the proper balance of that. Is it perfect? Is there going to be increases in delay at peak times? Yeah. But alternatives are not as favorable. And that's why we are so committed to doing this in the right way for the whole community, for the neighborhood.
Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, Mr. Galante, in your...
Microphone, Commissioner Parker.
Pardon me? Microphone. I can really cover the room without.
There you go.
Anyway, on the Table 6 in your analysis, and you're talking about a bypass lane going in there, what's going to happen at Barcelona at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon?
Well, first of all, we counted their driveways. They're included in the analysis. The bypass lane doesn't change those driveways.
No, but they
We
have-
actually improved their driveways because right now you really can't tell where the driveways are. We're rebuilding those islands that are between their parking lot and the road itself within the state right of way.
But people between 5 and 6 are going to be trying to get in and out of Barcelona to have their Friday evening happy hour or whatever.
Well, keep in
And
mind,
cars whizzing by
yeah,
aren't...
keep in mind, there are different peaks for different land uses. Now, I've been there for dinner on a Saturday night. This place will be closed. This place, the medical building, will be closed at 5:30 at night. And the restaurant and so on is getting busier.
Later. Okay.
So, fortunately, and that's the benefit of different land uses.
Right, and the question actually would be more problematic if we simply said, okay, we'll take, the zone change is denied, the application is denied, okay, so we're going to come back now with a piece of property that is already zoned in the neighborhood design district, and we're going to say, okay, permitted use, no zone change, no text amendment. Now let's talk about that strip center with the Chinese restaurant and the nail salon and the coffee shop and so on, and its proximity to Merritt Parkway, and how late are they going to be operating, and how's that going to work with Barcelona if the Chinese restaurant's popular, if they do takeout, and so on and so forth. Another alternative that I don't think is as pretty, because this medical office, I won't say there will be an occasional doctor who might on a specialty basis see a patient at 7 o'clock, but we all know these medical offices are local on time, they're basically shut down 5:30. So again, it's a perfect, relative to the activities across the street.
There's an incredible parking problem there as well, and you're talking about taking more of the right-of-way.
No, we're not touching their parking.
Not on their
No,
side. Okay.
We can't do that.
Okay.
It's all in the state.
A good point.
Mr. Galante, you talked about, you told us you're going to reconfigure the driveway over at the Hi-Ho Motel?
Yes.
The drawing that we were looking at, the colored the drawing right in front of you on the right-hand side, that depicts driveways. Is that the proposed location, just so we can visualize when we go out there, or is that the existing location of those openings?
On the Hi-Ho side?
Correct.
Those are their existing driveways. That's where
Okay.
they are.
Okay.
We're placing our only driveway right across from that second driveway, if you go going towards Reading.
And that's the existing second driveway as is now?
Yes.
You're just going to better define those
Yes.
spaces? Thank you.
We can't go on their property and change anything. We're not touching their parking, just redefining their driveway within the state right-of-way.
Thank you.
I'm done for the moment.
Any more questions, Mr. Galante from the commission?
No, you
Thank you,
can't
Mr.
leave.
Galante.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Where's table 6? Throw that up. Well, let me summarize on a preliminary basis, and then we'll have an opportunity, I'm sure, to speak to you one more time. Let's talk about the standards of your regulations. Section 25.7, standards for approval. Section 25.7.1, it's a permitted use. Well, if you grant the zone change, it's a permitted use, and allowing us to extend the zone is what we're asking for. Site plan meets the specific requirements of section 25.7.7. That is correct. Detailed architectural plans have been submitted, section 25.7.3. And again, when we came to the point of submitting architectural plans, we went to Mr. Franzen because we felt that would be our best possibility of coming up with a building that did meet your criteria of standards of appearance for the community. And we think he's done a wonderful job in that regard. Specifications for ingress and egress, off-street parking, and drainage are also met. Reviewed by the engineering department, section 25.7.4, I think that's clearly established. The overall design to accommodate this permitted use will not have any detrimental impact upon the neighborhood or adjacent property. Well, I think that raises a lot of what your absolute proper focus has been here, I think, and that's parking. That's, of course, section 25.7.5. Mr. Galante's testimony, at the end of the day, does take us back to Table 6. Table 6 is that analysis of what the impacts here are going to be. What it shows, for purposes of this record, is that as traffic engineers define impacts, there's not going to be any impact. What it shows as a practical matter, as Commissioner Barrett indicates, is that in certain cases, during certain peak periods, there is going to be increased delay for those short periods. Gets me back to my comment I made before. It's not a perfect world. You're wearing your zoning and your planning hat here, and you want to look at this piece of property and do something that takes it out of play in perpetuity and does it in a manner that is not inconsistent with your regulations. I find it interesting also with regard to this standard. This process is an important process, and everyone should have their say, and everyone will. And I can't speak for who's going to say what, but I'll tell you the pattern that I have seen in the letters and emails that you've received, that I've received copies of. This is a petition. I'm going to give the original here for copies for everybody. The pattern I'm seeing is that the proximate neighbors, by and large, who we've been working with, who are going to live with whatever you do or don't do, and again, not to speak for them, and I may be contradicted in some cases, but what I know so far is that the people who live proximately to this property, like myself, who have an immediate stake in what happens to this property, who are going to be directly impacted one way or the other, speak in large majority in favor of this proposal. And those who oppose it, and it is their right, and they should be heard, but they don't live on Hoyden's Lane. They live on Hillside Road. They don't live at the Greenfield Hunt Condominium Association abutting this property. They live on Verna Hill Road. They have their right to speak, as does their association. But at the end of the day, one has to ask, in terms of that standard in section 25.7.5, detrimental impact upon the neighborhood or adjacent property. What do the neighbors say? What do the adjacent property owners say? Not what does the Greenfield Hill Village Improvement Association say. or people who live 3, 4, 5 miles distant from what others will have to live with the fallout if this application is denied. It goes on to talk about, again, detrimental impact. Well, I've given you the restrictive covenant. We've worked hard to make peace with everyone we can. We've been successful with the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, and as you will hear, many, many of our neighbors. I think that speaks to your standards. We've got proper landscaping and buffering, section 25.7.5, and if you feel that that should be enhanced, as I said in answer to Mr. Kennelly's point, which I thought was a good one, then enhance it, and we will abide by that. Most importantly, what it comes down to here is section 25.7.7 says, in compliance, we've got an attractively designed building here for permitted medical office use in a neighborhood design business district, and that in fact will harmonize with the neighborhood and accomplish a transition in character between areas of areas of unlike character, thus protecting property values and preserving and enhancing the appearance and beauty of the community. I've got Barcelona Restaurant and Bar and the High Home Motel and one of the most lovely, for example, communities in town, the Greenfield Hunt, and some absolutely beautiful single-family homes. As I said at the beginning, that's a classic transitional area. Your regulations speak to that. I think this application affirmatively addresses that. And again, I think that is well borne out by the fact that so many of the people who do live adjacent to this, near this, support it, as opposed to the opposition stemming more theoretical considerations for people who will not be impacted by your decision. And finally, section 27.7.8, this proposal is consistent with the plan of conservation and development, because it not only provides for the establishment of an attractive and modern office space in Fairfield, benefiting tax base, and the needs of Fairfield residents for convenient and accessible medical care, but it also does provide some impetus to economic vitality in our community at a time when that's important to us, and that's all part of it. Look, at the end of the day, I can tell you, Mr. Richter can tell you, that for the last 4 years, our phones have been ringing off the hook with regard to this property. Why? It's 18 acres of property immediately adjacent to the Merritt Parkway, directly upon Route 58, a state road, directly across the street from the motel and the restaurant and the bar. It's directly accessible to public transportation. It's directly accessible to sewers. It has sight lines that meet all state standards. And people are interested in this piece of property, and we've resisted that. They are people, and this is not meant to criticize them, but they are people who would take the ultimate decision about the ultimate use in perpetuity of this property out of the hands of the commission and out of the hands of the community and take that ultimate control away. We need to do something with this property. We want to do something with this property that fits in the needs of the community, in the needs of the neighborhood. We've worked with the neighborhood in that regard. Subject to answering any questions you might have and a final rebuttal, I do hope that in wearing your planning hat, you'll consider this to be, especially in light of the commitments we've made about deed restricting the balance of the property to 5 single-family residential homes, a very good solution for this piece of property that will once and for all establish a proper transitional use that will harmonize with the neighborhood and not have any negative impact. So we'd be pleased to answer any questions you as members of the public may have.
You brought up the One, I found it interesting that they almost all followed the same format. But other than that,
We had nothing to do with preparing any of those letters. If people decided that they want to do something along those lines, that's fine, but they're still expressing their opinion.
yeah, absolutely. And you have brought up numerous times tonight taxes. You know that we, as a commission, cannot consider taxes. And we cannot consider schools.
The only reason I brought it is because in your plan of conservation and development, which is referenced in section 25, there is obviously a provision for consideration of, the economic climate of the community and so on. So I think it has relevance, especially with regard to the zone change.
Not under state law, though.
I don't
Our power
disagree
derives
with-
from state law.
Yeah, but I don't
specifically-
agree that your standards as set forth in your plan of conservation and development don't follow state law. I think they do. And I think you are entitled to
I
consider.
think you're taking it a number of steps out. One of the other things that has come up all the time is need. I would love to see how much empty office space and empty medical space we have at this moment. And if this hearing's going to go on, which I assume it will, those numbers can be gotten from somewhere. I would hope that...
They probably are beneficial to my case because I can tell you in Fairfield, although there is certainly provision for vacancy with regard to office space, medical office space, there is very, very little vacancy, which is why you're seeing from time to time applications like this in the community. But I understand your point.
Mr. Finelli?
I just have to say on a personal note, wow. Just, just very impressive, Mr. Fallon, in terms of the presentation. But I do have a question. Those folks you talked about who would, these potential folks who would strip us of the control of this incredibly valuable property, these nefarious folks from outside, could you talk a little bit, like, what we're talking about here? Who are these forces outside at the door? Because I will tell you something just quickly. If I was living on Hoyden's Lane or something like that, where they didn't want a softball field, but they can't wait to get a medical office building, apparently. If I heard about those nefarious forces, I might put my name on a petition too. But go ahead. I just want to understand a little bit more. Like, how will we be stripped of our power to stop, I don't know, some skyscraper or something?
Yeah, well, I think the concern here is, and
without being... I just want to understand what goes on.
Affordable housing statute, plain and simple. I've never, in appearing before you on behalf of a client, because I don't like to, rattle the saber. And because if I was in your shoes, quite honestly, that would often make me feel like, don't, Mr. Fallon, try to intimidate me. And there's no intimidation here, because we've been living with this for 4 years, okay? But the point I'm trying to make is, directly, and maybe I should have been more direct, but honestly I was afraid of, who does he think he is? The age we live in with an 18-acre site, as I've described it, accessible to sewers on the Merritt Parkway, people have an interest in that site. And based upon what the legislature in our state has determined, that puts the commission in a difficult position. It puts the neighbors in a difficult position. It puts Jack Franzen and I in a difficult position because, quite honestly, I can say, as Jack spoke personally in addition to his paid capacity here. Let me do that for a second, too. I've lived here in that neighborhood right up the hill for 25 years. I would be absolutely comfortable, not as the paid advocate, but as a resident, with what is proposed for this particular piece of property. It would make me feel comfortable, and I would feel it would have no detrimental impact whatsoever in the neighborhood. But if you take that piece of property, all 18 acres of it, throw out your regulations, don't talk to me about zone changes, don't talk to me about setbacks, don't talk to me about height restrictions, don't talk to me about coverage.
Mr. Fallon, hold on that one. We're out of tape. 1 second.
Probably out of time, too.
Don't talk to me for a second. Hold on.
so-
I can't.
Timing is perfect.
We had just 15 seconds left in our tape.
Then
But
as a
then-
resident...
Not yet.
And
Children of the tape.
Come on, Charlie.
Show's getting a lot slower.
Come on, Joey. It's like Jim
Continue.
Mason.
Thank you. Then, as a resident, I see the potential for development of that property. It is very, very upsetting to me. But you were right. I didn't say that perhaps as honestly as I should because I hesitate to do that. Because it's a thin line Because it sounds like you're trying to bully or intimidate the commission, and as you know, I've never, ever done that. But this is a reality here that I'm living with, representing this client for 4 years, and that we've all gone, we don't want to do that. But you all got to decide, the planning hat, what you want to do. And whatever you want to do, obviously that's what's going to happen. But in this particular case, those of us who live around here, as opposed to those of us who live more distantly, I think should get some consideration, but also I think the facts dictate it. If you can look at this traffic report, and you got to consider that, I know, because really traffic is the consideration. But if you can look at that and you can justify in your zoning and your planning function that this use will in fact not have a significant detrimental impact on the neighborhood, will harmonize with the neighborhood, and I hope you will approve this. Because I honestly believe, as a resident, it's a great solution to a piece of property that is going to have to be dealt with one way or the other. And we'll never get a better chance with local people in charge of the situation who are willing to deed restrict the over 17 acres in perpetuity so that you can only end up with 5 houses there, and in reality we'll end up probably with 2 or 3 or 4. And maybe at the end of the day we'll look at it and say, well, let's just deed it as open space to somebody, because it won't be worth the trouble to build 2, 3, or 4 houses. But I don't think there's ever a better opportunity to deal with this piece of property that is so important and so transitional.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me. Just to follow up on that, if I could just to put a fine point on it, what is the development that you're so afraid of happening on the site? So 18 acres, we have some design commercial, and then we have some residential. Is it that some that an owner of the parcel could come in under our regulations and put in a strip mall on the commercial side, and then put in a housing development on the residential side?
No, I think the strip mall, which could be done on the current zone, is not desirable or attractive in my mind. But I'm talking about an affordable housing application where somebody could come in and say, based upon sewerage capacity, traffic capacity, I want to build 250 units of housing there. And I honestly don't believe, and I won't represent them, I promise you that, but I honestly believe as an attorney, you won't be able to stop it. Based upon the standard of judicial interpretation of the affordable housing statute.
Okay, that puts a fine point on it. My question, that was follow up on his question. My question was whether you worked with any representative from the Greenfield Hunt, or if it was just neighbors.
Greenfield Hunt?
Yeah.
We have worked exceedingly over the last year, and I should recognize that for their time and patience.
You mentioned it, and if you mentioned it earlier...
And they're here, and they will speak in these proceedings, but the answer is, we have met numerous times and been in constant contact with the Greenfield Condominium Association, and I will not speak for them because they will speak for themselves, but I think it's fair to say that, we've made sure they were very much aware from the early stages of what we want to do here, and I think they're very comfortable with it.
Got it. Thank you.
And we also, for the record, and again, I thank them for their time, we obviously met extensively with representatives of the Conservancy and their attorney, Mr. Green, and we appreciate that. And we met extensively with Mr. Green and representatives of the Greenfield Hill Village Improvement Association, and although we weren't ultimately able to work an accommodation out that satisfied them, we certainly appreciate that time that they gave us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. At this time, I'll just explain to the public what's going to happen next. We have an 11 o'clock curfew, so we're obviously not going to start public comments. This meeting will be continued until next Tuesday, November 1st, at 7:30 p.m. This is the first and only item on the agenda. It will be the continuation of this public hearing. You can check the website tomorrow. We should have a location. We normally meet here unless there's some other event. Because this is a special meeting, I don't know that we have this room. So we will let you know that. At that time, we'll allow any member of the public, when we begin with public comments at that time, everyone will have an opportunity to speak. You address the commission. If you have any questions, you address the commission with your questions. Once the public is done speaking, the applicant has an opportunity to do a final statement and answer any of those questions that they choose to answer at that time. You also have the opportunity, we have a number of letters we've received already, which I'll read the names of the people into the record at the next public hearing Tuesday night. If anyone would like, rather than coming, or if they're unavailable, feel free to submit a letter to us. And it could be done via email or hard copy, whatever you'd rather do. If you go to our website, we have our own website, you could submit the correspondence to Mr. Wendt, the address is there. Or you could see him, these gentlemen, our staff, after the meeting. They can give you the email address if you can't make it and you'd like to submit something in writing to us. We will get those copies and we'll consider those as well for public comment. That being said, at this point, the meeting stands in adjournment. Thank you.